Chapter 1099. In front of Yi Xian was a swamp. Abyssal swamp. On the surface, this swamp looked very calm, but Yi Xian knew that there were hidden dangers in this swamp. Yi Xian looked at the great ape not far away. Can you ask their leader to come out for a chat? The great ape pondered for a moment, walked to the edge of the swamp, and punched the swamp. Boom! With this punch, the swamp in front of it directly exploded. Soon, the entire swamp boiled, and soon, countless abyssal giant crocodiles surfaced. Seeing this scene, the great ape retreated several zhang. In this swamp, it was no match for these abyssal giant crocodiles. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Who is their leader?" The great ape shook its head, "I don't know." At this moment, a huge giant crocodile suddenly climbed out of the abyssal swamp. This giant crocodile was more than twice the size of the other giant crocodiles. Yi Xian looked at the giant crocodile in front of him, and said with a smile, "Can we talk?" The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian, "Human." Yi Xian nodded, "Wu clan." The giant crocodile stared at Yi Xian, "Human, what do you want?" Yi Xian said, "I want to talk." The giant crocodile sneered, "Talk about what?" Yi Xian looked at the giant crocodile, "Do you want to leave this world?" The giant crocodile narrowed its eyes, "What do you mean?" Yi Xian chuckled, "I mean, I can take you out of this world." The giant crocodile said, "Why do we have to leave this world?" Yi Xian smiled, "Because the outside world's spirit qi is at least 10 times more abundant than in this world. If you go outside to cultivate, you will get twice the result with half the effort." The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian, "It's a human." Yi Xian smiled, "So what? Are humans bad? There are good humans too, aren't there?" Saying that, he pointed at the great ape, "If you don't believe me, ask it, I'm a good person." Giant ape, the giant crocodile looked at the giant ape. The giant ape hesitated for a moment before nodding. "He's indeed good. He's trustworthy." The crocodile looked at the ape. "Trust humans?" The great ape nodded. "Why not make a gamble? If he succeeded, he could bring the giant crocodile clan away from this world. If he failed, he wouldn't lose anything, right? Or do you want to stay here forever?" The giant crocodile fell silent. The giant ape continued, "With your talent, you will at least reach the sovereign realm in the outside world." Yi Xian was speechless. The crocodile frowned, "Sovereign realm?" The giant ape hurriedly nodded, "It is a kind of realm, extremely powerful." Did the giant crocodile really want to stay here forever? Even if he didn't think for himself, he had to think for the giant crocodile clan. Once we reach the outside world, with abundant spiritual energy, with our talent, let alone the sovereign realm, we can even reach the realm above the sovereign realm. As it spoke, it looked at Yi Xian. "Right?" Yi Xian hurriedly nodded, "Yes." The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. "What is above the sovereign realm?" Yi Xian blinked, then said, "Above the sovereign realm, there is the legendary self-release." The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. "If I go out, I also have the chance to reach the legendary self-release?" Yi Xian nodded. "Absolutely." The giant ape suddenly said, "Sir, it is not that our talent is not good, but the environment is not good. With our talent, if we go out, we can definitely surpass our ancestors. At that time, even if the Wu clan is in front of us, we can destroy them with a flick of our fingers." Yi Xian looked at the giant ape and blinked, feeling Yi Xian's gaze. The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. "Is there a problem?" Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "If I become the high priest, I will become friends. Everyone can live in peace, what do you say?" Everyone can live in peace, what do you say? After all, many people die in war. The giant ape nodded. "At that time, I can give you face." Yi Xian, at this time, the giant crocodile suddenly said, "Human, can I trust you?" Before Yi Xian could speak, the giant ape suddenly said, "Absolutely." The giant crocodile looked at the giant ape. The giant ape said, "This human is not bad. Moreover, not all humans are bad. There are good people among humans, right? Moreover, this is the last chance for our two clans. We have to grasp it." The giant crocodile fell silent. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly raised his left arm. "For freedom." The giant ape was stunned, then raised his left hand and roared, "For freedom." Behind him, countless monsters roared in unison. Freedom. They were equivalent to being trapped in a cage. This feeling was too suffocating. For freedom. Freedom. The giant crocodile was silent for a long time. Suddenly, it looked up at the horizon and said softly, "For freedom." As soon as its voice fell, countless giant crocodiles in the abyssal swamp roared in unison. Looking at the abyssal swamp in front of him, Yi Xian smiled slightly. He walked in front of the giant crocodile and said, "What is behind the abyssal swamp?" The giant crocodile said in a deep voice, "Sinful Canyon." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What kind of place is that?" The giant crocodile's expression was cold. "There is a group of night owls living there. At night, they will come out of their nests to hunt." At this time, the giant ape suddenly said, "Yes, my 10,000 beast mountain range is often visited by them." Yi Xian nodded. "Let's go to Sinful Canyon." As he spoke, he looked at the giant crocodile. "Can you go ashore?" The giant crocodile said, "Of course, but our strength will be reduced on land." Yi Xian smiled. "It's fine. Let's go." Just like that, Yi Xian led a large group of demon beasts towards Sinful Canyon. After an hour, Yi Xian arrived at Sinful Canyon. Even though it was daytime, Sinful Canyon was pitch black, and it was daunting. Yi Xian gazed at Sinful Canyon and said, "Can we talk to them?" The giant ape suddenly walked to the entrance of the canyon and smashed its fist against the ground. Bang! The ground shook violently. Meanwhile, a sharp and ear-piercing cry suddenly resounded from within the canyon, and it didn't take long for countless black shadows to charge out of the canyon. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he saw this. What are these fellows trying to do? Aren't they going to talk? Meanwhile, the giant ape suddenly said, "What should we do?" Yi Xian said, "Retreat." The giant ape immediately waved his arm. Soon, the group of demon beasts retreated like a tide. Before long, they retreated to the abyssal swamp. However, those nightingales didn't seem to have any intention of stopping and chased them fiercely. Yi Xian's expression sank. He pointed his finger at the sky, but there was no movement. Yi Xian was a little embarrassed because he just realized that he didn't have any cultivation. If it was outside, this finger would have wiped out these dregs in front of him. Yi Xian looked at the giant ape. "Can we beat them?" The giant ape said, "We can try." Yi Xian nodded. "Go." The giant ape suddenly roared in anger. It leaped up and slammed into the sky. This collision was like a small mountain, and its momentum was terrifying. Rumble. Countless nightingales were killed by the giant ape, but there were just too many of them. Yi Xian suddenly raised his left hand and pointed to the sky, "Fight for freedom. Kill." After saying that, he directly rushed out. Behind him, countless demon beasts rushed out one after another. Although there were many nightingales, there were also many demon beasts behind Yi Xian. If they fought, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage at all. Especially that giant ape, with its rough skin and thick flesh, those nightingales couldn't do anything to it. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang watched the group of demon beasts fight in silence. Amu was also silent. After a moment, Uncle Jiang suddenly said, "Why are those demon beasts following him?" Amu said softly, "Freedom." Uncle Jiang hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped. Amu said, "What do you want to say, Uncle Jiang?" Uncle Jiang shook his head. "I just feel that this kind of trial has lost its meaning." Amu looked at Uncle Jiang. "Uncle Jiang is wrong. It's a big mistake. Uncle Jiang looked at Amu. What do you mean? Amu said softly, unless you have invincible strength, intelligence is often more important than strength. This trial not only tests one's state of mind, but also one's intelligence. Except for the previous high priest, who didn't play some tricks when we came out. It's just that he played more thoroughly. Uncle Jiang was silent. Amu slowly closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Beside the abyss swamp, the battle had already ended. Those nightingales had already retreated into the Grand Canyon because the day was not good for them. Beside Yi Xian, the giant ape said in a low voice, "They will definitely attack again at night." Yi Xian suddenly said, "How many casualties did we suffer?" The giant ape looked around. More than 100 demon beasts. More than 100. Yi Xian's face darkened. After a moment, Yi Xian said softly, "Bury them properly." The giant ape shook his head, troublesome. Yi Xian suddenly said, "They are our comrades." Comrades. Saying so, he looked at all the demon beasts. From now on, we don't care about race. No humans, no giant crocodiles, no demons, no wolves, we are all together. I tell you, since you chose to believe me, I will definitely bring you out of this place. Outside, I will let all the demon beasts be reborn. I will do what I say. With Shaoling around, letting these demon beasts be reborn was not an empty promise. The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. Really? Yi Xian stared at the giant ape. Really? The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. Human, I know you are not an ordinary person. Here, your cultivation is sealed, your strength is inferior to us, but outside, your strength is definitely stronger than us. I hope I can do what I say. Bring us out of this place. Yi Xian looked straight at the giant ape. I will do what I say. The giant ape nodded. From now on, we will fight for you. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Light a fire." Light a fire? The demon beasts in the field were stunned. Yi Xian looked in the direction of the Grand Canyon and said fiercely, "Since they don't want to talk, then I won't talk. Light a fire." Saying so, he turned and started to light a fire. About half an hour later, Yi Xian led countless demon beasts towards the Grand Canyon of Nifas, and these demon beasts all carried torches. Yi Xian was now sitting on the shoulder of the giant ape, his left hand holding a burning torch, burning Grand Canyon. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang suddenly said, "Actually, he can already pass." Amu shook his head. After the Grand Canyon, it is just the beginning. Uncle Jiang slightly squinted his eyes. What is there? Amu softly said, "Sinners, P.S. I will return to Giang tomorrow, then I can write in peace. If there are any typos, one wrong word, my dick will be shorter by an inch." Chapter 1100. Yi Xian led his army of demon beasts to Nifa's gorge, and then Yi Xian ordered countless demon beasts to toss torches towards the gorge. In an instant, the entire gorge was set ablaze, and countless nightbirds charged out. Yi Xian roared furiously. "Fight!" As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead and charged out. Even though he didn't have a cultivation, his combat instinct wasn't bad. However, the nightbirds didn't attack, and they just flew into the sky. In next to no time, all the nightbirds vanished into the horizon. Yi Xian and the demon beasts were stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? Meanwhile, the flames within the gorge had suddenly vanished. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Suddenly, a stone flew out from within the gorge, and it was so swift that Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. Suddenly, the giant ape stood in front of Yi Xian, and then it suddenly smashed its fist forward. Bang! The stone pierced through the giant ape's right arm, causing blood to spray. At the same time, the giant ape was blasted flying. The expressions of all the demon beasts here instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. After all, the giant ape was the strongest amongst them. Yi Xian gazed at the gorge. A woman walked out slowly from within it. She wore a black dress, had long hair that hung loosely on her shoulders, and her hands and horns were tied with black iron chains. Uncle Zhang's expression instantly changed when he saw this woman. Amu's face was expressionless. The woman gazed at Yi Xian without any expression on her face, and she didn't speak a word. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "May I know your name, senior?" The woman glanced at the demon beasts and said, "Are you a participant of the Wu clan's trial?" Yi Xian nodded. The woman suddenly waved her right hand. Before Yi Xian could react, he was sent flying. This time, he flew a few dozen feet away. As soon as he landed on the ground, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Xian slowly crawled up. He stared at that woman, who pointed at the demonic beasts as she mocked, "Just a simple path of refinement, yet you actually gathered such a rabble. Where's your face?" Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the giant ape. "Take all the demonic beasts and retreat." The giant ape shook its head and stood in front of Yi Xian. At this time, the woman waved her right hand. Boom! The giant ape was sent flying hundreds of feet away before crashing heavily into the ground. At this moment, its body was covered in cracks and blood flowed freely. Seeing this, the demonic beasts revealed looks of fear. The woman glanced at the giant ape, her face expressionless. "Ant." With that said, she looked at Yi Xian. This generation of trial takers is really disappointing. Yi Xian ignored the woman and walked to the side of the giant ape. The giant ape was lying on the ground with blood flowing incessantly from its body. Yi Xian softly said, "I'm sorry." The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. "This is our choice." With that said, it wanted to stand up. However, it discovered that it was unable to do so. That attack directly caused it to be seriously injured. Yi Xian stood up and turned to look at that woman. "Your target is me?" The woman's lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Not qualified." Yi Xian nodded slightly and looked at the demonic beasts. "You guys go back." Those demonic beasts looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian said, "Bring the giant ape back." "Go back?" The woman suddenly sneered. "Aren't you thinking too much?" Yi Xian turned to look at the woman. "They don't pose any threat to us, right?" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "I don't like the sight of them." "Can't I?" Yi Xian stared at the woman. At this moment, the woman suddenly smiled. "You want to restore your strength?" Yi Xian did not say a word. "Woman." Z suddenly said, "Even if I restore my strength, I can still destroy them. However, seeing that you care so much about these beasts, I can give you a chance. In your current state, take one move from me. If you can take it, I will let them go." Yi Xian shook his head. "I can't take it." The woman smiled. "Then let the Wu clan's high priestess go out now, or let her restore her strength." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "I know the Wu clan's high priestess." The woman nodded. "I know a lot of things that can help her restore her strength. Then we can try to see if she can stop me." Yi Xian looked up at the horizon. In front of the tavern, Amu was silent. In front of the canyon, Yi Xian's face darkened. Amu must know what happened here. Amu did not respond. What did this mean? The woman slowly walked towards Yi Xian. "Have you thought it through?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Who the hell is it?" The woman looked straight at Yi Xian. "It doesn't matter who I am." Yi Xian pointed at the monster beasts. "They have no enmity with me." The woman smiled. "A bunch of ants. I don't like the sight of them." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "Amu, let me restore my strength." However, there was no response. Yi Xian looked up at the horizon. "Let me restore my strength." At this moment, Amu's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Even if you restore your strength, you can't beat her." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, can you stop her? Amu said, you can't. Yi Xian frowned. You can't either? Amu said, yes. Because she is the Wu clan's previous high priest. She is also the best fighter among all the high priests in history. Not to mention, even Shengong is not her match. The previous high priest. Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian looked at the woman. She is the Wu clan's previous high priest. The woman smiled. Yes. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, then why here? The woman looked at Yi Xian. None of your business. At this moment, the woman suddenly clenched her right hand. With this grip, the giant ape in the distance was lifted up by her. The giant ape's eyes were wide open. Blood splattered all over its body. It was about to explode. Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll take this. The woman looked at Yi Xian. The corners of her mouth curled up. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The woman smiled. Do you think I will go easy on you? Yi Xian looked at the woman. Don't you think so? The woman smiled. I'll give you one last chance. Let the Wu clan go. It's still not too late. Yi Xian grinned. Why do you have so much bullshit to say? The woman loosened her right hand. The giant ape fell to the ground. Yi Xian looked at the giant crocodile. Take it and leave. The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. It did not say a word. At this moment, the woman suddenly punched out. Boom! Yi Xian's eyes widened. His abdomen was punched through. Blood splattered everywhere. Yi Xian stood rooted to the spot. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang was also rooted to the spot. Amu clenched his fists. He did not say a word. In front of the Nifas Canyon, the woman looked at Yi Xian. She smiled. Do you think I will go easy on you? No, I won't. With that, she retracted her right hand. Yi Xian fell to the ground. At this moment, the giant crocodile suddenly turned around and left with the beasts. Yi Xian lay on the ground. His eyes were empty. Was this the end of him? At this moment, the woman walked in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. Do you regret it? Regret? He did not regret it. In the beginning, he brought the beasts with him out of selfishness. However, he never thought of killing them. Because therefore, when he saw the woman, he decisively ordered the beasts to retreat. He knew that the beasts were no match for this woman. At this moment, the woman said, Look, the beasts are running away. Yi Xian said softly, They are not running. Are they waiting for death here? The woman looked at Yi Xian. So, I ask, is it worth it? Because we can leave this place. Yi Xian looked at the woman. I don't like it when others die because of me. The woman shook her head. It is not a relative. It is just an evil beast. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. To me, if others don't betray me, I won't betray them. At this point, he frowned. He could still speak. What's going on? Yi Xian opened his eyes. He looked at his abdomen. There was no wound. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Is this a test? The woman sneered. Test? You are thinking too much. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, What do you mean? The woman walked to the side and sat down. She looked at Yi Xian. The Wu clan has a high priest now. They are not here to test the high priest. If I am not wrong, they are the witch servants of the current high priest. Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The woman said, They are not pure members of the Wu clan. Yi Xian said, The Wu clan is also human. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Did the high priest tell you that? Yi Xian nodded. The woman was silent for a long time. Then she said, she sees further than I do. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Senior, why are you imprisoned here? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Does it have anything to do with me? Yi Xian said quickly, Amu told me that the high priest is the best fighter in the history of the Wu clan. In other words, no one in the Wu clan can defeat him. In that case, no one should be able to trap him. So, if I am not wrong, Senior must have trapped herself here. The woman glanced at Yi Xian. Smart. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, why did you imprison yourself here? The woman was silent. Yi Xian walked to the woman's side. Can't you tell me? The woman said calmly, by hook or by crook. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? The woman looked at Yi Xian. When I became the high priest, I disregarded the lives of my clansmen for some benefits. I killed many of them. In my opinion, sacrificing some people in exchange for some benefits is completely worth it. Yi Xian was silent. The woman looked at Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian shook his head. I beg to differ. If it were me, I would not sacrifice my followers for some benefits. No benefits are more precious than life. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, So Senior blamed yourself and imprisoned yourself here? The woman shook her head. I don't think I was wrong. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, the woman said, But my master said I was wrong. He told me to meditate in seclusion here, but I don't think I was wrong. What's wrong with sacrificing a few for the benefit of the many? Yi Xian shook his head. You're wrong. The woman looked at Yi Xian. I wasn't wrong. Yi Xian said, But your thoughts were right. Hearing this, a strange look flashed in the woman's eyes. You also think I wasn't wrong? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, My original intention was good because I thought about the Wu clan. I didn't have any selfish motives. I just wanted to benefit the Wu clan. What's wrong with that? The woman suddenly stood up. She looked at Yi Xian with a trace of admiration in her eyes. Well said. I didn't expect you to be such an honest person. At this moment, her eyes were full of spirit. She was no longer as lifeless as before. Because in countless years, this was the first person to say she wasn't wrong. Chapter 1101. Yi Xian looked at the former high priest and said, I have something to say. It might not sound nice, but I don't know if I should say it. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Just say it. Yi Xian nodded. Your idea and your original intention are not wrong, but your method is not right. The woman said, What do you mean? Yi Xian said in a low voice, You said that sacrificing a few Wu clan members in exchange for benefits for the majority of Wu clan members, but have you ever thought about how unfair it is to those who are sacrificed? The woman fell silent. Yi Xian continued, If you were given a choice, if you were asked to sacrifice yourself in exchange for the Wu clan's benefits, you would definitely agree, right? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yes. The Wu clan's benefits come first. Yi Xian said, But have you ever thought that not all the Wu clan members have the same idea as you? More than anything else, they probably want to live. The woman fell silent. Yi Xian continued, Fairness. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Fairness? Yi Xian nodded. As the high priest of the Wu clan, you can decide the life and death of countless Wu clan members with a single thought. It's precisely because of this that you have to be fair. You said that some Wu clan members should be sacrificed in exchange for the benefits of more Wu clan members. Let me ask you, are these sacrificed people the weak ones? The woman nodded. Yi Xian said, May I ask, are these weak Wu clan members your people? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yes. Yi Xian nodded. Then that's right. No matter how weak or strong they are your people. They are the people you should protect as the high priest. Do you agree with this? The woman said, Yes. Yi Xian continued, Not everyone is as great as you. Most of the people of the witch tribe wanted to live, not be sacrificed. You are the high priest of the Wu clan. You have the heart to contribute to the Wu clan. But think about it, if you were just an ordinary Wu clan member and someone wanted to sacrifice you in exchange for benefits for other Wu clan members, would you be willing? The woman fell silent. Yi Xian looked at her and said seriously, your original intention and idea are right. Because you are doing this for the Wu clan members. But your way is wrong. The great priest protects the people of the sorcerer tribe, and in the great priest's heart, the people of the sorcerer tribe should not be divided by strength. No matter how weak they are, the great priest is like a god in his heart. They trust you so much, how can you sacrifice them? What if they have to be sacrificed? The woman asked suddenly. Yi Xian looked at her. If that happens, I choose to fight. We will fight together. All the Wu clan members will live and die together. The woman looked at Yi Xian and said nothing. Yi Xian said with a smile, are you trying to say that my decision will let more Wu clan members die? The woman shook her head. I understand what you mean. With that, she looked up at the sky and said softly, Master, as he said, my way is wrong. As soon as she finished speaking, the iron chains in her hands suddenly became illusory. Seeing this, the woman was stunned. Then she said in a trembling voice, you forgive me? But there was no response. 2 streams of clear tears suddenly flowed out of the woman's eyes. She said in a trembling voice, I should have apologized to you. But I am proud. When have I ever bowed to others? Still no response. Yi Xian said softly, Senior. The woman gazed at Yi Xian. I was an orphan. It was Master who pitied me and took me back. She taught me how to read, practice martial arts, and teach me witchcraft. Because I was an extraordinary genius, and my natural talent could be said to be the strongest expert in the history of the Wu clan. Over time, I became more and more arrogant. Especially after I passed through the path of trials with ease. I looked down on all the experts in the world. But it was exactly because of my arrogance and pride that I almost brought harm to the entire Wu clan. Master died because of me at that time. Since then, I've trapped myself here. But I did it out of guilt and not because I felt that I was really wrong. As she spoke, she closed her eyes slowly. Now that I think about the look in Master's eyes when she left all those years ago, I know that she was definitely very disappointed in me. Yi Xian said, Then have you thought about how you're making her even more disappointed by running away now? The woman nodded. I can't run away anymore. Yi Xian said, Are you going to leave? The woman nodded. The knot in my heart has been resolved. It's time to leave. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Take me with you. The woman gazed at Yi Xian. You're in the trial. Yi Xian said seriously, If you take me with you, then it's considered my ability, isn't it? The woman pondered for a moment and said, You're right. But I can't take you with me. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? The woman gazed at Yi Xian. Do you know why I didn't kill you before? Yi Xian asked, Why? The woman said softly, Because of your character. You're a witch's attendant. If your character isn't good, then I'll kill you on behalf of your shaman. Also, that demon beast friend of yours, I didn't hurt it. What you saw was witchcraft. Yi Xian fell silent. The woman continued, You're a witch's attendant of the Wu clan, so you're one of us. Moreover, witches' attendants have a respected status. If you abandoned those demon beasts just now, then who knows if you wouldn't betray the Wu clan in the future. But you didn't abandon those witches' attendants. Your high priest has good judgment. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm very weak. The woman smiled and said, So what? Who said that witches' attendants must possess formidable strength? Moreover, if your strength isn't enough, then you can improve, but if your character isn't good, then it's difficult to improve. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Why don't you take me with you? The woman grinned. You can rely on your own ability to walk down this path. If you walk down this path, then you'll obtain the respect of the Wu clan. At that time, the Wu clan won't respect you because of your high priest, nor because of your identity as a witch's attendant. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, then I'll walk down this path. The woman smiled and said, take care. With that, she was about to leave. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, after you leave this place, will you become the high priest? The woman smiled and said, take a guess. With that, she disappeared on the spot. In the scene, Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. That was no longer something he could control. Yi Xian walked towards the distance. At this moment, a pitch-black pen suddenly fell in front of him. Keep this pen. In the future, if you're in danger outside, use this pen to write the word, come. Speak, and I'll come. Yi Xian blinked, and then he hurriedly put away the pen. The high priest of the Wu clan was the best at fighting, and even Shen Gong couldn't defeat her. She was a super fighter. After putting away the pen, Yi Xian turned around and left. In front of the tavern, the woman appeared in front of Amu. Amu looked at the woman in front of him and didn't speak. Uncle Jiang hurriedly bowed respectfully. The woman glanced at Amu and said with a smile, you've chosen a good person. With that, she turned around and left. Amu suddenly said, the Wu clan needs you. The woman didn't look back, I'll be here when you need me. After saying that, she disappeared. Amu didn't speak for a long time. Yi Xian returned to the abyss swamp again. When he saw Yi Xian, Zhu Yuan hurriedly rushed in front of him. Sure enough, Zhu Yuan was fine. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was also relieved. He patted Zhu Yuan's thigh, it's good that you're fine. Giant Ape nodded slightly. Yi Xian glanced at the monsters, you guys stay here. I'll walk the rest of the way by myself. The giant ape frowned. You promised us. Yi Xian smiled and said, you misunderstood me. I mean, I'll go ahead first. If there's any danger, I'll come back to find you. But now, there are too many monsters. It's not good to attract too much attention. The great ape hesitated for a moment before saying, your current strength. Yi Xian smiled, it's fine. I'll be a little wretched. Giant Ape still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, don't worry. No matter what the outcome is, even if I die, my friend will let you out. I can promise you this. Giant Ape's expression was complicated, then be careful. If you need us, come back to find us. Yi Xian nodded, all right. Everyone, take care. With that, he turned around and left. Giant Ape looked at Yi Xian who left and said softly, there are good and bad humans too. Giant Crocodile said, can we really get out? Zhu Yuan nodded, yes. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared. The person who came was Amu. Amu looked at Giant Ape and the others, come with me. Giant Ape said, you are? Amu said softly, the high priest of the Wu clan. I can bring you out of here. Giant Ape hesitated and said, can we wait? Amu looked at Giant Ape and Giant Ape said in a deep voice, maybe he will need our help. After looking at Giant Ape for a long time, Amu smiled, all right. With that, she turned around and disappeared. In the distance, Yi Xian passed through Nifa's canyon. After Nifa's canyon, there was a plain. The plain was boundless. Yi Xian continued to walk forward. After walking for about an hour, Yi Xian saw a river. Yi Xian was overjoyed and quickly rushed over. As soon as he reached the river, he wanted to drink water. However, he resisted. He carefully observed the bottom of the river in front of him. After confirming that there were no dangerous monsters, he directly leaned down and drank water crazily. He was extremely thirsty along the way. One must know that he was now an ordinary person. At this moment, a soft voice suddenly came from the side, drink slowly, no one is fighting with you. Hearing this voice, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. Almost at the same time, the black hole in front of the tavern suddenly disappeared. Uncle John's expression changed and he looked at Amu. Amu narrowed her eyes and formed a seal with both hands, silently chanting an incantation. A moment later, a black hole appeared in front of her, but there was nothing in it. Amu's expression also changed at this moment. Amu's expression was frighteningly gloomy. An uninvited guest has entered. P.S. Even now, there are still readers asking about my gender. Chapter 1102. An uninvited guest. Beside the river, Yi Xian turned his head and saw a woman squatting not far away from him. The woman was wearing a simple cotton dress, and her hair was draped over her shoulders. She was holding a cup of water in her hand and was gently wiping her face. Washing her face. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he saw the woman. What kind of deity was this? Could she be the former high priest of the Wu clan? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before walking to the woman's side and bowing slightly. Greetings, senior. The woman turned around to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian saw the woman's appearance. The woman's appearance was really very ordinary, but it wasn't ugly. It was just an average appearance. The woman smiled. Sit. Yi Xian wasn't afraid and sat by the woman's side. The woman took out a white handkerchief and wiped her face lightly. After that, she said, "Have you heard of the sixth dimension?" Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. The woman chuckled. Don't be shocked. There are 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, and 5 dimensions. Naturally, there are 6 dimensions. What do you think? Yi Xian asked. According to what Senior said, does that mean there are 7 dimensions and 8 dimensions? The woman smiled. What do you think? Yi Xian shook his head. My strength doesn't allow me to think about these things. The woman shook her head. You have to think about it. At least think about the 6th dimension. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Senior, I really don't understand why there are 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and 4 dimensions in this universe. The woman suddenly said, aren't people divided into different classes in the mortal world? Yi Xian looked at the woman. The woman smiled. A long, long time ago, some people shouted the slogan of equality for all living things. Actually, this idea isn't wrong. But can all living things really be equal? In reality, people are divided into different classes. What do you think? Yi Xian fell silent. The woman continued. This universe is also divided into different classes. In this vast universe, it's very normal for high-level civilizations to enslave or even destroy low-level civilizations. If you're weak, you'll be beaten. This is an unchanging truth. Yi Xian was curious. Is the 6th dimension enslaving us? The woman smiled and said, it's not that simple. It's more complicated. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Senior, why are you telling me so much? The woman smiled and said, originally, you were given quite a bit of time. However, things have changed now. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? The woman pointed at the river in front of her. Look. Yi Xian looked at the river. The river suddenly turned into a galaxy, and in the depths of the galaxy, Yi Xian saw a familiar figure. A woman in a plain dress. The woman in the simple dress walked through the starry sky slowly. Yi Xian turned to look at the woman beside him. The woman said softly, watch carefully. Yi Xian turned to look at the river. At this moment, the woman in the simple dress suddenly stopped. Not far in front of her, there was a stone tablet. On the stone tablet, there were 4 large words, Life Forbidden Zone. Life Forbidden Zone? Yi Xian frowned. He had heard of this place in the 4th dimension. It was a forbidden zone. However, he didn't go there. Why did the woman in the simple dress come here? The woman looked at the stone tablet with an expressionless face. On her fingertips, 1 black and 1 white sword chi revolved. At this moment, a phantom suddenly appeared not far in front of the woman in the simple dress. Yi Xian turned to look at the woman. This phantom is? The woman said softly, just watch carefully. Yi Xian turned to look at the river. At this moment, the woman in the simple dress suddenly opened her palm. In her palm, a sword light condensed. The moment this sword light appeared, the entire starry sky lost its color. As for the phantom in front of her, it retreated tens of thousands of feet. The phantom suddenly raised both of its hands and quickly chanted something. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression changed. His body suddenly split open without any warning and blood splattered everywhere. At the same time, in the sky above the river, countless blood-red chains suddenly appeared. These chains were like a huge net that covered the sky. Beside Yi Xian, the woman watched quietly. She didn't say anything, nor did she do anything. In the starry sky, the woman in the simple dress's expression suddenly turned ferocious. The sword in her hand suddenly flew out. Chi! The phantom was instantly slashed into nothingness. At this moment, the mysterious power on Yi Xian's body disappeared. The blood-red chains in the sky also disappeared without a trace. In the starry sky, the woman in the simple dress had a ferocious expression. She held the sword in her right hand and her entire body emitted endless hostility. By the river, the woman suddenly said softly, "They are threatening her." Yi Xian looked at the woman, "Threatening her?" The woman nodded, "Using you to threaten her." Yi Xian's expression turned gloomy, "Who are they?" The woman said softly, "They are related to the prophet, and the prophet is related to you." Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He looked at the furious woman in the simple dress, "Don't worry about me. Kill them all." The woman in the simple dress suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. The next moment, she appeared in front of Yi Xian. This wasn't a phantom. It was her true body. Almost at the same time, in the Tendo pawn shop, Xiao Dao, who was lying on the counter, suddenly looked up at the Wu clan. Her eyes were filled with horror. By the river. The woman in the simple dress looked at Yi Xian. "I haven't left because I am worried about you." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Worried about me?" The woman in the simple dress said softly, "You are still too weak. It is not safe in this world." Yi Xian smiled, "Look, I am already at the second level of the mortal sword." The woman in the simple dress shook her head, "Not enough." Yi Xian looked at the woman in the simple dress, "You should believe in me." The woman in the simple dress looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian said seriously, "Believe in me. I can walk this road alone. I can't rely on you forever. I don't want to rely on you forever." The woman in the simple dress still didn't speak. Yi Xian said again, "I can do it." The woman in the simple dress walked to Yi Xian's side. She gently touched Yi Xian's cheek. "I am afraid. I am afraid of losing you again." Afraid. Beside Yi Xian, the woman looked at the woman in the simple dress. "They know this. That is why they deliberately provoked you." The woman in the simple dress narrowed her eyes. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. Yi Xian suddenly smiled, "Then go and kill them." The woman said, "This is what they hope for. Because once she leaves, there will be nothing in this universe that can threaten them." Yi Xian suddenly grabbed the woman's hand and smiled, "You don't owe this universe anything. You don't owe me anything. I can feel that you really want to kill them, right?" The woman in the simple dress nodded. Yi Xian smiled, "Then go and kill them." The woman suddenly said, "Once she leaves, you will be in danger." Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. "This is a trap within a trap." Yi Xian didn't care about the woman. He looked at the woman in the simple dress. "Do you believe in me?" The woman in the simple dress said softly, "I believe in you. But I want to give you more time." The woman suddenly said, "If you stay here, this universe will be safe. He will also be safe." The woman looked at Yi Xian. "I am leaving." Hearing this, the woman beside Yi Xian slowly closed her eyes. She knew that the woman in the simple dress had made her decision. The woman in the simple dress believed in Yi Xian. The woman really wanted to roar with rage. This man you believe in isn't reliable at all. But she knew that it was utterly useless. Because in the eyes of this invincible woman, this unreliable fellow was a treasure. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Is the prophet related to me?" The woman nodded. "Someone is hiding in the shadows and controlling fate." Yi Xian asked, "Who?" The woman shook her head. "I don't know. I have to go up there to find out." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Can you defeat him?" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "Your Qing is invincible." Yi Xian blinked. "Amazing." The woman looked up into the starry sky. The myriad of living beings, the myriad of stars, and the endless universe all have their own fate. There are very few who can truly escape their fate. I used my sword perception to search for the source of fate in the fourth dimension to see who is controlling it. But the other party is too far away from me. I can't sense it. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "If I want to deal with the karma source in you, then I must leave this place. Once I leave, you will have to rely on yourself for the rest of your journey." Yi Xian nodded. "Don't worry and go. I will walk the rest of my journey well." The woman smiled lightly. "I believe in you. Will you accompany me when I leave?" Yi Xian smiled. "All right." The woman waved her right hand, and she and Yi Xian vanished, leaving only the woman behind. The woman sat by the river. After a long period of silence, she said softly, "The world is going to change." At the Wu clan. The woman brought Yi Xian to the Wu clan's city. At this moment, a Mu appeared in front of Yi Xian. A Mu glanced at the woman and bowed slightly. "Greetings, senior." The woman nodded slightly and did not speak. Yi Xian pulled the woman and said with a smile, "I will take you to eat noodles." As he spoke, he pulled the woman and walked into the distance. A Mu hurriedly followed. Yi Xian left the Wu clan with the woman and a Mu and came to the affiliated city of Fu Wenzong, which was Fu's city. Fu's city was not big and was just a small city. The city was bustling with a lot of people. Yi Xian brought the woman and a Mu to a noodle shop. Yi Xian looked at the owner of the noodle shop and said with a smile, "Owner, give me 3 bowls of noodles." The owner laughed and said, "All right. Sir, please wait a moment." Yi Xian found a seat and sat down with a Mu and the woman. He looked at the woman and said, "Have you eaten noodles before?" The woman shook her head, "Never." As she spoke, she paused and said, "Do you have steamed buns?" Steamed buns. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he stood up and left. After a while, he returned. In his hands were 2 steamed buns. Yi Xian handed the steamed buns to the woman. The woman picked one up and took a bite before saying, "Delicious." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You like to eat steamed buns?" The woman nodded. Yi Xian was just about to speak when a formidable pressure suddenly swept down from the horizon. Along with the appearance of this pressure, the entire Talisman city trembled violently as if an earthquake was occurring, and many people within the city were even pressed flat on the ground by this pressure. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared not far from Yi Xian and the other 2. Seeing the person, Yi Xian was stunned. This person was none other than the godly craftsman. Shengong looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Human King, I have been looking for you for a long time." As he spoke, he spread his hands. "I have completely recovered my strength. Unless the Tendo comes, no one can protect you." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1103. Yi Xian's expression became a little odd. Beside Yi Xian, a Mu lowered her head slightly. She gently nibbled on the steamed bun that Yi Xian gave her, not saying a word. The plain-dressed woman beside her was also nibbling on the steamed bun. From the beginning to the end, she did not look at Shengong. At this moment, Shengong suddenly looked at a Mu, Wu clan's high priest. "Don't you know a lot of witchcraft?" Come, this god will give you a chance to perform witchcraft. Amu hurriedly shook her head. No, no. I can't beat you. You're the most powerful. Shingong narrowed his eyes and looked at the plain-dressed woman. When he saw her, he frowned. Because he could not sense the aura of the plain-dressed woman. Shingong looked at the plain-dressed woman. You look like you have a knack for it. Yi Xian lowered his head and nibbled on the steamed bun, not saying a word. The plain-dressed woman still ignored Shingong. Shingong stared at the plain-dressed woman. I'll give you a chance to make a move. The plain-dressed woman still did not say a word. Shingong said again, since you're not making a move, then I'll make a move. With that said, he gently pointed at Yi Xian and the other two with the strange trident in his hand. A water dragon shot out. At this moment, the plain-dressed woman suddenly looked up at Shingong. Her left hand picked up a chopstick from the table. The next moment, the chopstick flew out. Chi! In an instant, the water dragon was destroyed. The moment the water dragon was destroyed, Shingong's expression changed dramatically. He suddenly pressed his hands down, and an invisible water region appeared in front of him. Water region. The reason why he directly took out his trump card was because he felt danger. The aura of death. However, the moment his water region appeared, it disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. The chopstick was pressed against the area between Shingong's eyebrows. Shingong was stunned on the spot. The plain-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. Do you want to kill him? Yi Xian shook his head. I'll do it myself in the future. There was a trace of gratification in the woman's eyes. You've grown up. Yi Xian smiled and said, I can't always rely on you. The plain-clothed woman said softly, between you and me, there is nothing to rely on. However, you do need to grow. There are many things that you need to face by yourself. Life is life. Only when you experience it yourself can it be called life. Yi Xian nodded. I'll remember it. At this time, Shingong suddenly said in a trembling voice, are you a Tendo? The woman in the plain dress did not say anything. Yi Xian got up and walked to the soup pot. The boss had already run away. Yi Xian scooped up the noodles from the pot and brought it in front of the plain-dressed woman and Amu. The plain-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, try it. The plain-dressed woman nodded. She picked up the chopsticks and tasted the noodles. After a while, she ate another 2 mouthfuls. Then she looked at Yi Xian and said, not bad. Yi Xian smiled and looked at Amu. You try it too. Amu nodded and started to eat. As for Shingong, he did not dare to move because the chopsticks were still on his forehead. The plain-dressed woman ate more and more and felt that it was good. Soon, she finished the noodles and looked at Yi Xian. Another bowl. Yi Xian laughed. I'll cook for you. With that, he got up to cook the noodles. The plain-dressed woman looked at Amu. Amu said softly, you can save this universe, right? The plain-dressed woman shook her head. Amu said in a deep voice, you're not willing to help. The plain-dressed woman looked at Amu and said, I don't owe this universe anything. Moreover, this calamity is born from the heart. It's not something that humans can resist. From another perspective, the appearance of this calamity is not a bad thing. Amu smiled bitterly, I know, but many people will die. The plain-dressed woman picked up the steamed bun and took a bite, so be it. Amu, the plain-dressed woman glanced at Yi Xian who was making noodles in the distance and said softly, as long as he doesn't die, it's fine. Amu said in a deep voice, Senior, is there really a 6th dimension? The plain-dressed woman shook her head, I didn't pay attention to it. Amu was a little puzzled, why? The plain-dressed woman took out a chopstick and drew a circle on the table. No matter which dimension, they are all within this circle. Amu hurriedly sat beside the plain-dressed woman and said, Senior means that they are all in the same universe? The plain-dressed woman nodded. Amu frowned slightly, then why are there 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, and 5 dimensions? The plain-dressed woman asked, We are all humans, why are there different levels? Amu was silent. The plain-dressed woman gently tapped the circle with her chopsticks. The people above will not care about the life and death of the people below. Just like you, will you care about the life and death of the living beings in the fourth dimension? Amu shook her head. Not to mention the fourth dimension, even in this fifth dimension, she only cared about the future of the Wu clan. The plain-dressed woman looked at Amu. I don't want to interfere in his life, because I believe that he will walk a good path. Amu nodded, I understand. At this moment, Yi Xian carried a bowl of noodles and placed it in front of the plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman directly picked up her chopsticks. This time, she ate very quickly, and in a short while, she finished it all. Moreover, she even drank the soup. The plain-dressed woman put down her chopsticks and then looked at Yi Xian. I'm leaving. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said softly, will you come back? The plain-dressed woman shook her head. I will wait for you up there. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he nodded, all right. The plain-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. After I leave, I won't be able to take care of you anymore. Yi Xian smiled, believe me, I will live to find you. The plain-dressed woman nodded, and then she opened her palm, and from the prison pagoda, a sword suddenly flew out. The plain-dressed woman held the sword, and then she looked at the horizon. In the next moment, she suddenly stabbed the sword towards the sky, open. As her voice fell, bang! The distant starry sky suddenly split open. Yi Xian hurriedly said, can I ask you a question? The plain-dressed woman nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, are you an ordinary sword? The plain-dressed woman shook her head, no. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, then what realm are you at? The plain-dressed woman leaned over to Yi Xian's ear, I have no realm. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky, and it didn't take long for her to vanish amidst the starry sky. She's gone. Yi Xian was slightly stunned as he watched the plain-dressed woman leave. He knew that the plain-dressed woman had really left this time. She had gone to the sixth dimension. Amu, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke softly, the people up there have really infuriated her this time. As she spoke, she paused for a moment, and then she continued, of course, she probably feels that you can face everything by yourself. Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed. From this moment onward, he would really have to walk his own path in the future. Because the plain-dressed woman was gone. Right at this moment, Shengong, who stood nearby, spoke abruptly, who is she? Yi Xian smiled, take a guess. Shengong stared fixedly at Yi Xian, she's gone. Yi Xian nodded. Shengong suddenly sneered, you still dare to be so arrogant after she's gone? Yi Xian looked at Shengong, do you believe that I'll call her back? Hearing this, Shengong's expression instantly changed. He glanced at Yi Xian, do you really think that I'm afraid of her? Just now, I just didn't use my full strength, and I was caught off guard by her. If I had used my full strength and fought her head-on, it's hard to say who would have won. Yi Xian and Amu were dumbfounded. Yi Xian turned to look at Amu. In the future, if anyone says that I, Yi Xian, have the most shameless face in the world, I'll definitely beat him to death. Amu hesitated, and then said, I've finally met someone who's even more shameless than you. Yi Xian, hearing Yi Xian and Amu's words, Shengong's expression was a little ugly. He was about to speak when Amu suddenly said, she hasn't gone far yet. Not gone far. Hearing this, Shengong's eyelids twitched. He looked at the starry sky, and a moment later, he looked at Yi Xian, we'll settle our scores another day. With that, he turned and disappeared at the end of the horizon. Amu suddenly said, you should have let her kill him just now, because he's really not weak. Yi Xian smiled, I know. Amu looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said softly, from now on, I'll have to rely on myself. Amu nodded, yes. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. After looking at the executing heaven sword for a moment, he looked up at the horizon. At this moment, his mind was filled with the words of the woman in the plain dress before she left. The boundless realm. Is the boundless realm above the mortal sword? At this moment, Xiao Dao suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. You let her go? Yi Xian nodded. She left. Xiao Dao stared at Yi Xian. Aren't you afraid of death? Yi Xian smiled. Why? Xiao Dao shook his head. Many people didn't make a move because of her. But once she leaves, those people will no longer have any scruples. Yi Xian asked, who are those people you're talking about? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. You'll regret your decision. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why? Xiao Dao sneered. Why? Do you really think that some people are being nice to you because of you? You're wrong. They're doing it because of her in the four-dimensional universe. Once she leaves now, do you think those people will give you face? Just as he was about to speak, at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in the sky. The person who came was someone Yi Xian was familiar with. Demon Yen. Demon Yen looked at the depths of the starry sky, and said softly, finally gone? Yi Xian looked at Demon Yen. Miss Yen, don't tell me that you're here to ask for the pagoda from me. Demon Yen blinked. I'm not here to ask for it, I'm here to borrow it. I'm just borrowing it. You won't be so stingy, right? Yi Xian said in a deep voice. I thought we could be friends. Demon Goose smiled and said, personally, I quite admire you, but I have to think for my clansmen. Yi Xian smiled. If that study can really withstand the fifth dimension tribulation, wouldn't it be the same if you guys followed me? Demon Yen looked at Yi Xian. But in my opinion, that study can only guarantee the safety of one side. Moreover, I don't like to put the lives of my people in the hands of others. It's best for the fate of my people and myself to be in our own hands. As she spoke, she slowly clenched her right hand, and then smiled. You can choose peace, because I also don't want to be stained with your blood. But let me tell you, if you don't want Fu Wenzong and the Worldwide Academy to be reduced to ashes, you'd better make a smart choice. Demon Yen still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, I choose to fight. Demon Yen looked at Yi Xian. Without her, you'll realize how laughable your so-called toughness is. As her voice fell, the space behind her suddenly split open, and then countless demons floated out. Chapter 1104. Fight. Yi Xian did not expect that as soon as the plain-dressed woman left, these people would not be able to hold themselves back and attack. More importantly, he did not expect that Demon Yen would be the first to attack. At this moment, he suddenly understood something. Most of the time, friendship was built on powerful strength or a powerful background. That was the reality. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He did not regret letting the plain-dressed woman leave. On the contrary, there were no shackles on his heart. At this moment, a moose suddenly handed the prison pagoda to Yi Xian. Inside it were all his treasures. Yi Xian smiled. Having a sword is enough. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged into the sky with the executing heaven sword in hand. Second tier of the common sword. When he saw this scene, the Daoist in the distance immediately narrowed his eyes. She did not expect that Yi Xian had reached the second tier of the common sword. In her opinion, with Yi Xian's state of mind, he would need at least a few more years to reach the second tier of the common sword. Most importantly, she realized that Yi Xian had become somewhat different. Confidence. At the moment, Yi Xian was less cunning and more confident. In the sky, Demon Yen looked at Yi Xian. Second tier of the common sword. Yi Xian smiled. Yes. Demon Yen chuckled. That's beyond my expectations. Yi Xian suddenly laughed. If you want to fight, let's fight. What's with all the nonsense? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. Hum. A sword's hum shook the heavens and earth. In the distance, Demon Yen narrowed her eyes. She pointed a finger forward and an illusory black finger suddenly appeared in the sky. In front of the black finger, a ray of sword light suddenly stopped. At this moment, Yi Xian stomped his right foot and stabbed forward with his sword. Boom! The black finger suddenly vanished, and then Demon Yen suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She spun her right hand lightly, and then a black vortex appeared behind it as it smashed towards Yi Xian's chest. Yi Xian, on the other hand, didn't try to defend himself. Instead, he stabbed his sword at Demon Yan's throat, exchanging injuries for lives. However, when his sword was half an inch away from Demon Yan's throat, Demon Yan's left hand's 2 fingers clamped down on his executing heaven sword. However, her hand was directly imprinted on Yi Xian's chest. Boom! Yi Xian instantly retreated 1,000 feet, and as soon as he stopped, a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Not only that, but his entire body was enveloped by a black aura, and this black aura was currently corroding his indestructible golden body. In the distance, Demon Yen gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. I've lived for so many years, and I've fought thousands of times more battles than you. In terms of combat awareness, you're probably quite a bit inferior to me. As for your indestructible golden body, I've told you before that a physical body of this level is indeed rare, and it's difficult for an ordinary person to injure it. However, I'm no ordinary person. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished. Demon Yen suddenly raised her hand to block, and a ray of black light enveloped her arm. This block just happened to block a ray of sword light, and before Yi Xian could react, Demon Yan's fist had already smashed against his stomach. Bam! Yi Xian's entire body arched as he was sent flying. However, the moment he was sent flying, the executing heaven sword in his hand flew out and slashed at Demon Yan's head. However, the sword stopped half an inch away from her head, because 2 fingers on her left hand had directly caught the sword. However, at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her. Demon Yen narrowed her eyes, and just as she was about to make a move, Yi Xian directly hugged her, and then slammed his head into her face. Bam! This time, Demon Yen did not defend herself and was directly slammed by Yi Xian. After the collision, Yi Xian did not stop. He used his hand as a sword and slashed at the back of Demon Yan's neck. However, before the sword finger could touch Demon Yan's skin, a powerful force suddenly sent him flying. This time, he was sent flying hundreds of feet. After Yi Xian stopped, he opened his right hand, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. In the distance, Demon Yen stared at Yi Xian. To provoke me, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the distance, a pair of wings suddenly appeared on Demon Yan's back. 10-winged demon wings. The moment the wings appeared, Yi Xian only felt his vision blur. Immediately after, he felt an aura of death. He instinctively crossed his arms in front of him to protect his head. Boom! A powerful force suddenly slammed into his arms. Bam! Yi Xian retreated frantically. At this moment, he felt another powerful force. Yi Xian stomped his right foot. Domain. Rumble. In front of Yi Xian, a shadow suddenly stopped. It was Demon Yen. Demon Yen looked at Yi Xian. Sword domain. Yi Xian suddenly wielded his sword with both hands and slashed down. Demon Yen suddenly disappeared on the spot, and Yi Xian's sword slashed through thin air. Yi Xian raised his head to look at Demon Yen. Demon Yen smirked. What a sword domain. After saying that, she opened her right palm. The next moment, in the distant sky, a huge black hand quietly appeared. The moment this hand appeared, the space in the field boiled. Rumble. Heaven and earth trembled. Below, Xiao Dao suddenly said softly, Demon's hand. Amu looked at Xiao Dao. Is it very powerful? Xiao Dao nodded. Powerful. Amu looked up at Yi Xian in the sky. Use the shield. Tai Chi shield. In the sky, Yi Xian looked at the demon's hand. His intuition told him that he couldn't handle this hand. Amu wanted him to use the Tai Chi shield. Humanity's #1 shield. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. No need. After saying that, he looked at the executing heaven sword in his right hand. My sword is enough. After saying that, he stomped his right foot and transformed into a sword beam that shot into the sky. Believe in the sword. Believe in yourself. In the distance, Demon Yan's right hand suddenly fell down. The demon's hand descended from the sky. In an instant, the entire sky turned illusory. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword stabbed into the demon's hand. Boom! The demon's hand trembled violently and countless cracks appeared. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared and spun his sword. Rumble! The demon's hand exploded and turned into nothingness. After breaking the demon's hand, Yi Xian looked at Demon Yan in the distance. Demon Yan stared at Yi Xian. You're indeed different from before. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand and said softly, I'm sorry. In the past, he relied too much on external objects. This was actually a lack of confidence in himself and the executing heaven sword. What a swordsman should rely on the most was the sword. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the executing heaven sword suddenly trembled and the sound of a sword vibrated. Below, Amu suddenly smiled. Yi Xian was indeed different from before. Confidence. The current Yi Xian was more like a swordsman. A powerful swordsman. Truly terrifying. Demon Yan's body suddenly rose into the air. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. He disappeared on the spot. The moment Yi Xian moved, Demon Yan also wanted to attack. However, at this moment, a mysterious force enveloped her. Sword domain. If not for the suppression of the sword domain, with Demon Yan's speed, she could totally beat him up. Therefore, when he fought with Demon Yan, he had to use the sword domain to suppress her. After the sword domain suppressed Demon Yan's speed, Yi Xian just happened to arrive in front of her and slashed at Demon Yan's head. Demon Yan was expressionless. The demonic wings behind her suddenly turned into rays of black light and slashed at Yi Xian. In an instant, Yi Xian was directly engulfed. Boom 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 boom. Explosions resounded incessantly in the sky. Below, Xiao Dao looked up at the sky and said softly, he's changed a lot. Amu smiled but did not say anything. Xiao Dao said calmly, however, if he continues to fight like this, he will be the one to lose. Amu shook her head. I don't think so. Xiao Dao looked at Amu. Amu said softly, Miss Xiao Dao, you can take a closer look. Xiao Dao looked up at Yi Xian in the sky. Soon, she frowned because she realized that Yi Xian was getting stronger as the battle went on. Xiao Dao said in a low voice, he has just broken through. Fighting can make him stronger. Amu nodded. Xiao Dao said softly, now I understand why the plain-dressed woman left. In the sky, Yi Xian and Demon Yan were still fighting fiercely. However, Yi Xian was being suppressed. Although he was being suppressed, the situation was still optimistic. Not only that, but Yi Xian was getting stronger as the battle went on. About 15 minutes later, Yi Xian was careless in his fight with Demon Yan and was directly punched in the chest by Demon Yan. Bam! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying hundreds of feet away. Before he could stop, Demon Yan appeared in front of him again. In the next moment, Yi Xian retreated rapidly in the sky. This kick had pushed him back tens of thousands of feet. This time, Demon Yan didn't give Yi Xian a chance to catch his breath. Below, Amu's face darkened. This Demon Yan's battle awareness and ability were much stronger than Yi Xian's. However, this was normal. This Demon Yan was an ancient peak sovereign realm expert. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly gave up on his defense and allowed the demon's fist to strike his chest. At this instant, Yi Xian wrapped his arms around the demon eye's arm, and then he suddenly pulled it towards himself. Boom! The two collided, and then both retreated madly. In the sky, after Demon Yen stopped, she looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, there was a cold murderous intent in her eyes. She didn't attack again because she knew that she couldn't kill Yi Xian in a short time. Moreover, Yi Xian was using her to practice. If this continued, Yi Xian would become stronger and stronger. Delay could lead to changes. At this thought, Demon Yen suddenly laughed. Yi Xian, you've successfully angered me. Originally, I only wanted to take the items, but now, I want to kill. With that, she looked up at the sky. God Emperor, are you not going to make a move? After a moment of silence, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in the sky. God Emperor. The Divine Spirit Clan. These two originally hostile clans had now joined forces. God Emperor looked at Yi Xian. Little friend Yi, if you're willing to hand over those two god items, the Divine Spirit Clan will leave immediately. Moreover, you'll still be a friend of the Divine Spirit Clan. Yi Xian laughed. How can a friend steal a friend's things? I, Yi Xian, despise friends like you. With that, he pointed the executing heaven sword at God Emperor and Demon Yen. If you want the book room, come, kill me first. Chapter 1105. In the sky, God Emperor looked at Yi Xian in silence. He still had some misgivings. Although the plain-dressed woman had left, Yi Xian and Tendo still had some unclear relationship. The God Spirit Clan was also afraid of Tendo. As if knowing God Emperor's misgivings, Demon Yen smiled and said, "Are you afraid now?" The God Emperor looked at the demonic goose. The demonic goose softly said, "The fifth dimension tribulation that year was exchanged for the lives of the ancestors of our two races as well as countless other seniors. This time, who will bear it for us?" God Emperor was silent. Demon Yen said, "I also don't want to be tainted by his karma, but this is our only choice." After a long silence, God Emperor looked at Yi Xian below. "Since you want war, then let's fight." As soon as he said this, the sky behind him suddenly split open and countless God Spirit Clan experts flew out. At this moment, a moose suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side. "Do you want to fight by yourself or do you need my help?" Yi Xian rolled his eyes at a moo. What a joke. Although he had broken through to the second tier of the common sword, it was absolutely impossible for him to fight the entire God Spirit Clan and Demon Clan. Amu smiled and looked at Demon Yen and God Emperor in the sky. Demon Yen smiled and said, "High Priest, you won't let the Wu clan fall into war, right?" Amu smiled and said, "Why do you say so?" Demon Yen looked at Amu. "Because the Wu clan still has a mortal enemy, the Celestial Clan." Amu blinked. "You are threatening me." Demon Yen smiled and said, "Our two clans have no enmity towards the Wu clan, but if High Priest insists on protecting Yi Xian, then we can only go to the Celestial Clan to drink tea." Amu looked at Demon Yen. "You go and drink." After that, two black-robed elders with staffs in their hands suddenly appeared behind Amu. Behind the two black-robed elders were dozens of Wu clan experts. The Wu clan. Demon Yan's face darkened when he saw the Wu clan's powerhouses making a move. Originally, she was 80% sure that the Wu clan wouldn't help Yi Xian because the Wu clan had a powerful enemy. However, she did not expect that the Wu clan would make a move. God Emperor's face was also extremely gloomy. If the Wu clan made a move, it would be a big problem. Below, Amu looked at Demon Yen and said with a smile, "Guys, do you still want to fight?" Demon Yen looked at Amu. "Why?" Amu blinked. "Miss Yen, he is my shaman servant." Demon Yen smiled and looked at God Emperor. "Let's go to the Celestials for some tea." After that, she turned and left. The God Emperor also left. After a while, the experts of the Divine Spirit race and the Fiend race also left. Below, Yi Xian looked at Amu. I've implicated the Wu clan. Amu shook her head. You are my shaman's servant. How can you say I implicated you? Your business is my business. It is also the Wu clan's business. Yi Xian was about to speak when Amu suddenly said, Now, we have to think about two things. Yi Xian said in a low voice, the first is the Celestials. The second is Shengong. After saying that, he paused and said, there is also the third thing. Those hidden in the dark who want the study room. Amu nodded. Yes. Yi Xian said in a low voice, they may have joined forces. Amu smiled. Yes. Yi Xian blinked. Then won't I be in danger? Amu smiled mischievously. It seems so. Yi Xian turned to look at Xiao Dao. Miss Xiao Dao, I want to ask you something. Xiao Dao nodded. Speak. Yi Xian walked to Xiao Dao and said, there is the sixth dimension, right? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. The place she went to is not a place you can go. Yi Xian asked, why? Xiao Dao said calmly, there are no more than 5 people in the 5th dimension who can go to that place. She can go because she is really strong. As for you, your current strength is not enough to spy on that place. Do you understand? Yi Xian said in a low voice, am I not strong enough? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Do you think you are strong enough? Yi Xian nodded. Xiao Dao shook her head. Who gave you such strong confidence? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Dao looked at the sky and said softly, live well. After saying that, she turned and left. Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiao Dao. Are you from the 6th dimension? Xiao Dao stopped in her tracks. You think too simply of this universe. You think too simply of me. After saying that, she disappeared. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu said softly, she is very mysterious. Yi Xian nodded. Let's not care about her. Just take care of ourselves. Amu looked at Yi Xian. What do you plan to do now? Yi Xian smiled. I don't like to sit around and wait for death. Amu blinked. What do you want to do? Yi Xian looked up at the sky. In his eyes, a trace of killing intent flashed. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly trembled. Yi Xian was stunned. The next moment, he was overjoyed. In the blink of an eye, he returned to the prison pagoda. Amu followed him into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian arrived at the 5th floor. Just as he arrived, a woman walked out. Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Ling's lips curled up. Brother. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Ling. You broke through? Yi Ling nodded. Yes, I did. As she spoke, she sized up Yi Xian. There was a trace of surprise in her eyes. You've become stronger. Yi Xian smiled. Yes. But I have not reached the rebirth state. Rebirth state. As he spoke, he suddenly thought of something. That was the tomb. As he spoke, he looked at Amu. Amu nodded. Later, we will go to the Wu clan. Then, I will let you go to the tomb. Yi Xian said in a low voice. If I enter the tomb, I'm afraid some people will not let it go. Amu nodded. That's true. But you have to go. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult to reach the rebirth state. If you can reach the rebirth state, that demon Yen will not be able to suppress you. Yi Xian said, but I am a little worried. Amu said in a low voice. Just focus on your breakthrough. Leave the rest to me. Yi Ling suddenly looked at Amu. You are? Amu blinked. I am your brother's high priestess. He is my witch's servant. Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian. Witch's servant? Yi Xian smiled. This is the Wu clan's high priestess. Her name is Amu. Yi Ling nodded. Right at this time, a moose suddenly said, "Actually, Miss Yi Ling can reach the ruler realm." Hearing this, Yi Xian turned to look at Amu. "What do you mean?" Amu looked at Yi Ling. "Her foundation is too good. It is completely possible for her to reach the ruler realm." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Amu. She has just arrived at the rebirth state." Amu smiled. The ruler realm is not the same as the rebirth state. What the ruler realm needs is not comprehension, but resources. Moreover, in terms of experience, my Wu clan has experts who can teach her. Yi Xian frowned. "Isn't it too much of a rush?" Amu shook her head. "If it were her alone, it would be too much of a rush. But if she has the help of my Wu clan's resources and experts, then there is no rush. Because her talent is excellent, even above yours. Moreover, her foundation is very good." She paused for a moment when she spoke up to this point, and then she said, "The spirit energy in this era can't be compared to our era. It's much more difficult for the people of this era to cultivate. But it's exactly because of this that the foundation of the people of this era is much better than the people of our era. It can be said that there are many good seedlings in this era, and they lack resources and opportunities." Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling. "Let's go to the Wu clan." Yi Ling cast a glance at Amu. "Are you sure?" Amu nodded. "Sure." Yi Ling remained silent for a moment, then said, "All right." Amu said in a low voice, "Let's not waste time. Come with me to the Wu clan now." Yi Xian nodded. Just like that, Amu brought Yi Xian and his sister away from Fu Wenzong and went to the Wu clan. Once they entered the Wu clan, Amu suddenly said, "Have Uncle Jiang come to me." Soon, Uncle Jiang arrived before Amu. Amu looked at Uncle Jiang. "Notify the 12 great shamans and 36 divine shaman generals. Have them come to Shaman City." As she spoke, she paused for a moment before continuing, "Have all the powerful warriors of the Wu clan come to Shaman City." Uncle Jiang asked in a low voice, "Girl, is something big going to happen?" Amu smiled. "It's nothing. It's just that 2 of my friends are about to reach a breakthrough, and I'm worried that someone will cause trouble." Uncle Jiang cast a glance at Yi Xian and his sister, then asked, "Them?" Amu nodded. Uncle Jiang nodded slightly. "Understood." Once he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Amu turned around and looked at Yi Xian. "Come with me." Once she finished speaking, she brought Yi Xian and his sister to a dense forest in the city. Behind the forest, Amu said, "Release the grave." Yi Xian nodded. He swung his right hand, and the grave landed not too far away from the 3 of them. Amu looked at Yi Xian. "Go in." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Amu, my instincts tell me that many people won't give up." Amu smiled. "I can't guarantee anything, but I will do everything in the Wu clan to protect you." Yi Xian looked at Amu. After a long while, he looked at Yi Ling. Yi Ling smiled. "I'll wait for you to come out." Yi Xian nodded, then turned around and walked into the grave. This was not the time to be sentimental. All he could do was walk out of the grave as soon as possible. Because he knew that the people in the dark would definitely not give up on this good opportunity to target him. Amu suddenly looked at Yi Ling. "You can also go and break through now. I will arrange for you to enter the Wu clan's ancestral shrine. The souls of the Wu clan's ancestors will help you reach the ruler realm." Yi Ling looked at Amu. "Why are you helping my brother and sister?" Amu smiled. "Because he is my wizard's attendant." Yi Ling looked at Amu, not saying a word. Amu smiled. "Your brother trusts me very much." Yi Ling nodded. "Then I trust you too." Saying that, she looked at the grave. "I'll wait for my brother to come out first." Amu nodded slightly. She was about to speak when she suddenly frowned, and then she turned her head. Yi Ling asked, "What's wrong?" Amu said softly, "I'm afraid that misfortune never comes alone." In the faraway graveyard, a grave suddenly loosened. Soon, a coffin floated out. There were many white runes on the coffin. After a while, the white runes disappeared. Then, a woman floated out of the coffin slowly. Almost at the same time, all the experts of the Celestials rushed over like crazy. P.S. Everyone hopes that the update will be at 7:30 or 8 o'clock sharp. Chapter 1106. The woman who floated out of the grave was dressed in snow-white clothes. She held a white staff in her hand and was barefooted. Not far from her were Hao Tian, Abu Zhan, Xing Zhantian, and the 8 groups of spiritual beings. And behind them were countless Tian clan experts. At this moment, almost all the awakened Celestials were here. The woman before them was the God Master of the Celestials. Seeing God Master, Hao Tian and the other 3 bowed slightly. The Celestials behind them all knelt on the ground. God Master slowly closed her eyes. After a long time, she opened them again. Is Amu awake? Hao Tian nodded. Yes. Much earlier than God Master. Hearing this, God Master narrowed her eyes. At this moment, Demon Yen and God Emperor suddenly appeared. God Master looked at them. Hao Tian quickly explained, these 2 are Demon Yen and God Emperor from the Demon Clan and the God Clan respectively. They are here to join forces with us to fight against the Wu Clan. Demon Yen smiled. Congratulations on your awakening, God Master. God Master suddenly said, what did Amu do after she woke up? Tell me the important things. Hao Tian said in a low voice, she took in a wizard servant. God Master frowned slightly. About half an hour later, Hao Tian told the priest everything that had happened during this time. In the field, God Master closed her eyes and pondered. Not daring to disturb her, Hao Tian and the others waited quietly. After a long time, God Master suddenly looked at Demon Yen. Your target is Yixian? Demon Yen nodded. We can join forces. Hao Tian suddenly said, we just received news that Yixian is in the midst of a breakthrough. If we want to make a move, this is our chance. Demon Yen smiled. It won't be difficult for the Demon Clan, the God Clan, and the Sky Clan to destroy the Wu Clan. The Divine Master softly said, you too, I have just woken up and my strength has yet to recover. My Tian Clan has the will to destroy the Wu Clan, but we are powerless. Demon Yen frowned slightly when she heard this. She naturally understood that this God-tier master was refusing her. Demon Yen looked at the priest. Why? The priest smiled. Send the guest off. Hao Tian wanted to say something but stopped. Demon Yen suddenly smiled and said, Divine Master. God Teacher looked at Hao Tian. What, my words don't matter anymore? Hearing this, Hao Tian's expression changed. He quickly looked at Demon Yen and God Emperor. Both of you, please. Demon Yen smiled. Okay. With that, she and God Emperor turned around and left. After the 2 of them left, Hao Tian looked at Divine Master. Divine Master, the priest said softly, our opponent is no longer the Wu Clan. Hao Tian was puzzled. Why? God Teacher looked at Hao Tian. In the past, our opponent was the Wu Clan. That was because only the Wu Clan could threaten us, and only they could threaten our interests. But now, the 5th dimension tribulation is coming. The biggest threat to us is the 5th dimension tribulation. At this time, we should look further. The 5th dimension tribulation. Hao Tian was silent. The God Teacher said, those 2 just now wanted the Prophet's study. They didn't really want to help us destroy the Wu Clan. Moreover, they don't have the ability. Starting a war with the Wu Clan will only bring us harm. Xing Zhantian said, why don't we seize the study? God Teacher looked at Xing Zhantian. Why does the Tian clan need the protection of a study? Hearing this, everyone's blood boiled. Xing Zhantian laughed. God teacher is right. Why does the Tian clan need the protection of a study? Protect? The pride of the Tian clan. Hao Tian hesitated, then said, but that Yi Xian, he stole the divine items of the Tian clan and stewed the heavenly dragon. Yi Xian. The god teacher slowly closed his eyes. You shouldn't have provoked this person. Hao Tian said in a deep voice, God teacher, where did this person come from? The god teacher said softly, I can't see through him. The 8 group of spiritual beings suddenly said, God teacher, are we just going to let this go? That Yi Xian not only slaughtered the heavenly dragon clan, but he also stole the divine items of the other clans. The god teacher looked at the 8 group of spiritual beings. Do you want the heavenly dragon clan to be exterminated? The 8 group of spiritual beings' expression changed. What do you mean, god teacher? The god teacher said softly, you already targeted him. What was the result? Hao Tian was silent. He was almost killed by a punch from that little girl. And that little girl wasn't even her real body. It could be said that if that little girl was her real body, it would be unimaginable. Apart from that little girl, there was also the woman in the plain dress behind Yi Xian. Although he didn't know where the woman in the plain dress had gone, he could tell that she wasn't simple. Even he couldn't see through her. This person's strength was definitely above his. And he still didn't know how many people were behind Yi Xian. The god teacher suddenly said softly, we can't afford to provoke him. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. They all looked at the god teacher. The god teacher said softly, you heard me right. We can't afford to provoke that person. We only have 2 choices. We can either befriend him or not provoke him. As she spoke, she glanced at the crowd. Not everyone can become that woman's witch servant. The 8 group of spiritual beings said in a deep voice, who is he? Absin also said in a deep voice, God teacher, Yi Xian is indeed a mysterious person. What is his background? After a long silence, the god teacher said, he has been to Buzhou Sacred Mountain, right? Hao Tian nodded. Yes. The god teacher looked at everyone. Even the Tendo gave him face. What right do we have to mess with him? Everyone was speechless. After Demon Yen and God Emperor left the nothingness dimension, their expressions were a little ugly. They had thought that the heavenly clan would definitely join forces with them. After all, the Wu clan was the heavenly clan's mortal enemy. They didn't expect that the god teacher would reject them. Demon Yen suddenly said, she has no reason to reject us, unless, God Emperor said softly, unless she's afraid of something. Yi Xian. Demon Yen was silent. Now that she had calmed down, she felt a little regretful. Yi Xian was really too mysterious. Even the Tendo had to give him face. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the field. The newcomer was none other than the godly craftsman. Shengong looked at Demon Yen and Demon Yen. I'll join forces with you. Demon Yen looked at Shengong. Your Excellency is from the Tendo era? Shengong nodded. Yes. Demon Yen said in a deep voice, what's your purpose? Shengong said calmly, don't worry. I don't want that study on him. I only want Yi Xian. Demon Yen frowned. Only want him? Shengong was expressionless. Yes. Demon Yen smiled. Yi Xian is breaking through now. It's the best time for us to kill him. However, the entire Wu clan is protecting him. With our strength, we can't kill him. Shengong said calmly. I'm not the only one. Demon Yen narrowed his eyes. There's more? Shengong nodded. Gather the experts of the demon clan and the god clan. With that, he turned and left. God Emperor suddenly said, should we trust him? Demon Yen said calmly, if he's alone, we won't make a move. Everything depends on the situation. God Emperor nodded. Yes. Soon, the two left Tendo pawn shop. The one-legged woman suddenly floated into the pawn shop. Xiao Dao looked up at her. What's the matter? The one-legged woman said in a deep voice, she's gone. Xiao Dao was silent. The one-legged woman said softly, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Xiao Dao smiled. What do you think? The one-legged woman shook her head. I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Xiao Dao said softly, it's a bad thing. The one-legged woman asked, why? Xiao Dao said with a smile, because without her, the higher-ups won't care about this place. The other party angered her and forced her to leave this place. This is a conspiracy. However, the other party neglected one thing. The one-legged woman said in a deep voice, her strength. Xiao Dao nodded. Her strength is different from what the higher-ups thought. The higher-ups have seriously underestimated her strength. Forcing her to go up is a huge disaster for them. The one-legged woman asked, isn't that a good thing? Xiao Dao looked at the one-legged woman. Who will block the fifth dimension tribulation? The one-legged woman said in a deep voice, even if she is here, she might not block it. Xiao Dao shook his head. The meaning of her existence isn't to block the fifth dimension tribulation, but to be the one after it. The fifth dimension tribulation will purify the world, but it won't completely destroy the universe. After the fifth dimension tribulation, there will be a huge one, which is the most terrifying. The one-legged woman said in a deep voice, a lot of people will die in the fifth dimension tribulation, right? Xiao Dao nodded. Yes. The one-legged woman looked at Xiao Dao. You know a lot, but you don't have any way to stop it? Xiao Dao shook his head. There's no way. No one can stop it. This is a sin created by the myriad of living beings. They will have to bear the consequences. As she said this, she looked at the one-legged woman. This isn't a heavenly tribulation, it's a tribulation of the human heart. There is only one way to get rid of this tribulation, and that is to restore the universe to its original state. Everyone will no longer plunder, no longer cultivate, and no longer destroy. Let the universe recover. Only by doing so will the tribulation disappear. Hearing this, the one-legged woman's pupils shrank. At this moment, she understood what the fifth dimension tribulation was. Xiao Dao said, but how difficult is it to accomplish this? The prophet once wanted to accomplish this, but he discovered that it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Do you want to change the entire fifth dimension? Impossible. The plain-clothed woman can't either. What she can do is destroy this universe with a single sword strike. However, she can't change the people of this universe. As she said this, she slowly closed her eyes. The myriad of living beings live in this universe, but the myriad of living beings don't cherish this universe. And now, in order to survive, this universe wants to be destroyed. The myriad of living beings have no way to stop it, because the one that wants to destroy them is the universe they live in. Can they resist? How can they resist? Do they want to destroy the universe that everyone lives in? As she said this, she looked at the one-legged woman. The myriad of living beings have the ability to destroy this universe, but they don't have the ability to save it. In other words, they aren't willing. Just like you. Are you willing to give up your cultivation and return everything to this universe? The one-legged woman was silent. Xiao Dao put down the ancient book in his hand and softly said, this universe doesn't owe anything to the myriad of living beings. Chapter 1107. The pawn shop suddenly fell silent. After a long while, the one-legged woman suddenly said, since we can't get rid of this disaster, why did the prophet do all this? Xiao Dao looked at the one-legged woman, because he is working hard. The one-legged woman asked, what does he want to do? Xiao Dao said softly, he has never thought about fighting against the fifth dimension disaster. He wants to be reborn from destruction. Hearing this, the one-legged woman's pupils shrank, filled with disbelief. Wu Clan. On this day, a woman in a white dress walked into Shaman City. No one stopped her. Just like that, the woman in white came to a dense forest. There, she saw Amu and Yiling. Amu looked at the woman in white. A Qian, long time no see. The woman called a Qian was a god-tier master. A Qian looked at the grave in the distance and smiled. Reincarnation? Amu nodded. A Qian said softly, you were one step faster than me. Amu smiled. After I came out, I realized that this world is different from what we thought it was. A Qian scanned the surroundings. It's indeed different. Amu blinked. What do you think? A Qian looked at Amu. What can I think? Amu smiled. Looks like we have the same idea. A Qian stared at Amu. What level has that woman reached? Amu shook his head. I don't know. A Qian frowned. You don't know either? Amu nodded. I don't know. A Qian said softly, why does such a person exist in this era? Amu smiled. She has already left. A Qian narrowed his eyes. Sixth dimension? Amu nodded. It should be. Sixth dimension. The two women were silent. They actually did not understand the legendary sixth dimension at all. In the entire Fiend God era, no one was able to pry into the sixth dimension. A Qian remained silent for a long time before he turned around and left. Amu suddenly said, Sis, I need your help. A Qian did not even turn his head. It depends on my mood. With that, she disappeared into the horizon. Amu smiled. Yiling suddenly asked, will she help? Amu nodded. Yes. Of course, deep down, she wants to destroy the Wu clan, but she will choose to help. Yiling asked, why? Amu softly said, because she knows that only the Wu clan and the Tian clan can join hands to resist the fifth dimension tribulation. Just like back then, if our two races couldn't come to an agreement, no one would dare to sleep. Yiling asked, why can't you sleep now? Amu shook his head. Sleeping once has already used up all the resources of our two races. We don't have the ability to let all of our clansmen fall into a deep sleep again. With that, she looked up at the horizon and softly said, this time, we can only fight it head-on. A Qian left the nothingness dimension and came to the Tendo pawn shop. Inside the pawn shop, Xiao Dao looked up at a Qian and smiled. A divine master of the Tian clan. A Qian softly said, Miss Xiao Dao is well. Xiao Dao smiled. What's the matter? A Qian nodded. I have a few questions I want to ask. Xiao Dao nodded. Speak. A Qian looked at Xiao Dao. Miss Xiao Dao, do you come from the sixth dimension? Xiao Dao shook her head. I refuse to answer this question. After a long silence, a Qian asked again, Miss Xiao Dao, does the prophet also come from the sixth dimension? Xiao Dao was silent. A Qian looked at Xiao Dao. Can't you tell me? Xiao Dao shook her head. His identity is very special. I don't know how to tell you. I also advise you not to think about his identity. It is not something you can touch. A Qian suddenly asked, what about Yi Xian? Xiao Dao was silent for a moment and softly said, you have chosen not to be his enemy. Am I right? A Qian smiled. I'm not completely sure yet. As far as I know, he has a lot of enemies now. And his biggest backer seems to have left this world. Xiao Dao looked at a Qian. You will not choose to be his enemy. The reason why you said this is because you want me to reveal more information about him. A Qian smiled. Excuse me. Xiao Dao calmly said, everyone knows that the plain-dressed woman has left. However, do you think that he only has that plain-dressed woman behind him? Hearing this, a Qian narrowed his eyes. Who else is there? Xiao Dao looked at a Qian. I don't want to talk about this second generation. It's annoying. A Qian, Xiao Dao suddenly stood up. Let me tell you. That study room is actually very useful. A Qian looked at Xiao Dao. How useful? Xiao Dao smiled. It can really protect your celestial race from the fifth dimension tribulation. Qian smiled. Miss Xiao Dao wants me to be his enemy? Xiao Dao shook her head. I want to tell you that whoever takes away the study room will die. Saying this, she stared at Xiao Dao. Other than this second generation, no one can defend that study room. Qian narrowed his eyes. The study room comes from the sixth dimension. Xiao Dao laughed. You guessed it right a little. Saying this, she stood up and left. In the pawn shop, Qian did not speak for a long time. Nothingness dimension. After Yi Xian entered the tomb, he immediately felt the aura of death. Death? Reincarnation? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly understood. Gradually, Yi Xian lay in the tomb. What is reincarnation? In the tomb, Yi Xian pondered and comprehended. Outside the tomb, Yi Ling sat quietly. She just looked at the tomb. A man walked to Yi Ling's side and smiled. It's okay. Don't worry too much. Yi Ling looked at Amu. Thank you for helping my brother. Amu shook his head. You're being too polite. Just as Yi Ling was about to say something, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Following the appearance of this powerful aura, a middle-aged man appeared in the sky above Shaman City. The newcomer was none other than the godly craftsman. The moment Shengong appeared, his gaze fell on Yi Ling. He had already investigated Yi Xian. He realized that in Yi Xian's heart, Yi Ling was the most important. It could be said that as long as he caught Yi Ling, he could do whatever he wanted to Yi Xian. As the human king, once Yi Xian was under his control, he could obtain endless benefits. The moment Shengong appeared, Demon Yen and God Emperor appeared behind him. Besides these two, there was also an old man in black and a mysterious man with a bird's head. There were 2 balls of blood-red flames in the sleeves of the old man in black. As for the man with a bird's head, he held a pair of electric hammers that flashed with lightning. In the sky, Shengong looked at Amu. Little girl from the Wu clan, we have some ties with the ancestors of the Wu clan. We don't want to slaughter the Wu clan. This matter has nothing to do with the Wu clan. As long as you don't interfere, we will only take Yi Xian away. We won't hurt the Wu clan. Amu blinked. Aren't you afraid of the woman in the plain dress? The corners of Shengong's eyes twitched. The woman in the plain dress. As for that mysterious woman, he naturally did not forget her. Shengong suddenly sneered. The woman in the plain dress? If I hadn't been careless and underestimated my enemy that day, what could she have done to me? When have I, Shengong, ever been afraid of anyone? Amu blinked and then shook her head. In terms of shamelessness, you and he are evenly matched. Shengong said angrily, little girl from the Wu clan, I'll give you one last chance. Send that Yi Xian over. Otherwise, today will be the day the Wu clan will be exterminated. Amu suddenly said softly, if you want to take him away, you can only do it over the dead bodies of the Wu clan. Shengong narrowed his eyes. Kill. As his voice fell, his right hand suddenly turned down. In an instant, countless streams of water appeared in the sky. The next moment, the streams of water suddenly transformed into 12 water dragons that were thousands of feet long. As Shengong waved his right hand, the 12 huge dragons swooped down from the sky. In an instant, the whole world trembled. Below, 2 old men in black suddenly appeared behind Amu. The next moment, the 2 old men in black rushed up to the sky. In an instant, countless black gas formed a huge net that drowned the water dragons. Rumble. Rumble. The entire sky suddenly started trembling violently. The 2 black-robed old men forcibly blocked the water dragons. Shengong's face turned dark. He took a step forward and a mysterious power suddenly enveloped the entire sky. Waters. The moment the waters appeared, the black gas from the 2 old men was instantly suppressed. Soon, the black gas was completely corroded by the 12 water dragons, and the 12 water dragons swooped down from the sky. If they landed, the entire shaman city would be destroyed. At that moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the sky. The person who came was the tribe leader of the Wu clan, Wu Shi. Wu Shi looked at the 12 water dragons with an expressionless face. He clenched his right hand into a fist and a powerful force gathered in his hand. After a moment of silence, he suddenly threw a punch towards the sky. When he threw his punch, a glare from his fist swept through the sky like the sun. Rumble. Right before everyone's eyes, that glare from his fist dispersed the 12 water dragons. At that moment, Wu Shi suddenly charged into the sky and threw a punch towards Shengong. A vicious glint flashed in Shengong's eyes as he stood in the sky. He suddenly turned into a ray of light and vanished on the spot. Hiss. A tearing sound suddenly resounded in the sky, and immediately after, a shocking explosion resounded. Rumble. The sky above Shaman City trembled violently. Wu Shi retreated thousands of feet, but once he stopped, he charged forward and tore through the air with his physical body. Shengong suddenly let out a furious roar in the distance, and an invisible pressure appeared in the sky. Waters. As the waters appeared, a powerful force suppressed the shaman servant. The shaman servant suddenly let out a furious roar from within the waters and threw a punch forward. Rumble. The waters trembled violently and Shengong's face instantly turned slightly pale. Shengong was shocked when he saw this. He turned his head to look at the old man in black robes and the other standing nearby. I'll hold him back. All of you attack. Don't hold back. Destroy the entire Wu clan. Once he finished speaking, he charged towards the shaman servant. The old man in black robes looked down from the sky in the distance. 2 balls of fire burned in his eyes. Since the Wu clan wants to be destroyed so badly, then I'll fulfill your wish. The moment he finished speaking, his body suddenly started burning. The temperature in the area instantly increased exponentially, and the space around him turned illusionary. The space here could not withstand the heat. Just as the old man in black robes was about to attack, a woman suddenly appeared before him. P.S. There have been a lot of typos lately. JJ is gone. Chapter 1108. The newcomer was the Wu clan's previous high priestess. Looking at the old man in black before her, the corners of the previous high priestess' mouth lifted slightly. Destroy my Wu clan? Who do you think you are? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly opened her palm. In the next moment, a black thunderbolt fell into her palm. In the blink of an eye, she charged towards the old man in black with the thunderbolt in her hand. Everywhere she passed, lightning flashed. In the distance, the old man in black's face suddenly turned ferocious. He pressed his hands forward, and a wave of flames swept out. In an instant, the entire sky turned into a sea of fire. Within the sea of fire, lightning flashed and shook the heavens and the earth. In the distance, the faces of Demon Yen and God Emperor darkened. Because they noticed that this woman was actually suppressing the old man in black. The Wu clan's experts had greatly exceeded their expectations. Demon Yen turned to look at the bird-headed expert in the distance. The latter suddenly leaped up and swooped down from the sky. Whoosh! In an instant, countless thunderbolts poured down from the sky. Countless thunderbolts descended as if to crush the earth. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, 2 old men in black suddenly appeared in the sky above the Wu clan. The 2 old men in black held black staffs in their hands and quickly chanted. Gradually, countless black ancient characters appeared in the sky. These black ancient characters actually started to corrode the thunderbolts. Seeing that his thunderbolts were blocked, the birdman suddenly roared furiously and waved the electric hammer in his hand wildly. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the sky, countless thunderbolts suddenly appeared, and then poured down like a storm. In the distance, God Emperor suddenly said, "Should we make a move?" Demon Yen shook her head. "The Wu clan hasn't used all their trump cards. If we make a move now, we'll suffer great losses." God Emperor asked. "Wait?" Demon Yen nodded. She glanced at Shingong in the distance. "He definitely has more trump cards. Wait for him to use them." God Emperor said in a deep voice. "These experts from the era of Tendo are extremely powerful. If we join forces with them, it'll be like asking a tiger for its skin." Demon Yen shook his head. "We don't have any other choice. We can only seek victory in the midst of danger." The God Emperor was silent. Far below, Amu looked at the horizon, his face expressionless. Tendo era. Shingong was from the Tendo era. The Wu clan would not dare to be careless when facing a powerhouse from the Tendo era. That was an era even earlier than the Wu clan. At this moment, Wu Shi in the sky was suddenly pushed back by Shingong. After Wu Shi was pushed back, Shingong did not attack again. He looked around and saw that his people were all blocked by the Wu clan. His expression suddenly became extremely ugly. Below, a moose suddenly pointed at Demon Yen in the distance. "Old man Shui, you can let them do it. They've been watching the show." Hearing this, Shingong looked at Demon Eye and Demon Yen. Demon Yen narrowed his eyes. This high priest of the Wu clan was trying to sow discord. Shingong obviously knew this as well. He did not say much and turned to look at Amu below. "I'll give you one last chance." Amu blinked. "I'll think about it." Demon Yen suddenly said, "She's stalling for time." Shingong looked at Amu. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." As his voice fell, he turned around and slashed lightly. The space split open. The next moment, a powerful aura suddenly spread out from the cracked space. Below, Amu narrowed his eyes. "What kind of monster is this?" Yiling walked to Amu's side. "How long more until brother comes out?" Amu said in a deep voice, "It's still early." Yiling was silent. In the sky, black shadows suddenly floated out from the cracked space. These black shadows were shaped like ghosts. Their eyes were ferocious and extremely ugly, and they had a pair of wings. Below, Yiling asked, "What are these?" Amu looked at those monsters and frowned. "I don't know." On the other side, Xiao Dao, who was in the dark, also frowned when she saw these monsters. "This Shingong is too daring. He actually released these dark creatures imprisoned by the Tendo." Beside Xiao Dao, the one-legged woman asked, "Dark creatures?" Xiao Dao nodded. During the Tendo era, there were some creatures that lived in the dark world. These creatures were also one of the creatures of this universe. They lived and died in darkness. They were naturally violent and extremely cruel. In the past, they almost destroyed the entire universe. In the end, the heavenly axiom appeared to suppress them and seal them in the dark world. Who would have thought that this godly craftsman would actually release these things? Does he really think that the Tendo is already dead? When he said this, he seemed to have thought of something and narrowed his eyes. No, he definitely doesn't have such guts. He must have something to rely on. The one-legged woman looked at Shingong in the distance. He definitely has a trump card. He's not afraid of the Tendo's trump card. Xiao Dao lifted her head to look at the depths of the galaxy and said softly, "Right after that woman left, countless monsters came out. The Wu clan is in danger." In Shaman City in the distance, Amu's expression also turned grave at that moment, because the sky above Shaman City was filled with those dark creatures. Their numbers were secondary. The main thing was that the presence of those dark creatures was incredibly strong. Very strong. The entire Shaman City was already dark, because the sky above Shaman City was filled with a dense amount of dark creatures. These dark creatures were roaring madly, and their voices were piercing to the ears and unpleasant to the ears. At that moment, Shingang suddenly let out a furious roar. Kill them! The moment his voice faded away, the dark creatures suddenly charged downwards. That charge was like a flood that broke a dam and could destroy the sky and earth. The expressions of the Wu clan and the other powerful warriors instantly turned incredibly grave. At that moment, a moose suddenly swung her right hand, and an ancient picture rushed into the sky. 8 trigrams. When the 8 trigrams appeared in the sky, it shuddered violently, and soon, a gigantic 8 trigrams rune covered the sky above Shaman City. At that moment, the dark creatures crashed into the 8 trigrams rune one after another. Boom, 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 boom. A series of densely packed explosions suddenly rang out between heaven and earth. The 8 trigrams rune had blocked it. However, the dark creatures crashed into the 8 trigrams rune one after another. The 8 trigrams rune might have stood firm, but Amu's face had turned slightly pale. The 8 trigrams rune could block them, but she could not. Because the 8 trigrams rune would use up her spiritual aura and mental power. In the sky, Demon Yen cast a glance at the dark creatures with an incredibly grave expression. She had not expected Shingang to have such a trump card. If these dark creatures went to the ancient battlefield, then even if the evil devil tribe and the divine spirit tribe worked together, they would not be able to stop them. It was too terrifying. At that moment, countless powerful warriors of the Wu clan suddenly appeared behind Amu. At that moment, all the powerful warriors of the Wu clan had gathered together. Amu's face turned even paler. She could not hold on for much longer. That kind of consumption was too great. Wu Shi cast a glance at Amu, then said, "All members of the Wu clan, listen up. Fight with me." The moment he finished speaking, he charged into the sky. Below, countless powerful warriors of the Wu clan charged into the sky. At that moment, Amu retracted the 8 trigrams rune. The moment the 8 trigrams rune disappeared, the dark creatures instantly charged towards the powerful warriors of the Wu clan below as if they had gone mad. When she saw this, Amu could not help but clench her fists. Because as soon as the battle began, the Wu clan was at a disadvantage. There were too many of them. Too many. Their numbers were at least 10 times that of the Wu clan. Moreover, countless dark creatures were charging out incessantly from within the pitch-black hole in space, and it seemed like there was no end to them. Moreover, not a single member of the Wu clan retreated. If this continued, then the Wu clan would definitely be exhausted to death. Right at this moment, the sound of space being torn apart resounded in the distant sky. Everyone in the surroundings turned their heads and looked over. 100 white-robed experts with sabers in their hands were charging swiftly towards them from afar, and there were a few thousand experts with spears in their hands behind these 100 white-robed experts. The undefeated army. Demon Yen suddenly roared furiously, "Attack!" As soon as she finished speaking, the space behind her and God Emperor suddenly split apart, and then countless demons and gods charged out from within the spatial rift. The demon army and the divine army. The experts of these two armies charged directly at the undefeated army. What they needed to do was to stop Arrow's people from helping the Wu clan. Because if this continued, the Wu clan would soon be defeated. Demon Yen looked into the distance and smiled. "Invincible Arrow, I heard that you were the best fighter in the Cambrian era. Why don't you come out and exchange a few blows?" Right at this moment, a sword ray suddenly appeared in front of Demon Yen. Demon Yen flipped her right hand, and a huge black hand swept out. Devil's hand. The sword ray arrived. Boom! Demon Yen instantly retreated several hundred feet. A petite girl stood where Demon Yen had been standing. The newcomer was Invincible Arrow. With the immortal sword in hand, Arrow looked at Demon Yen in the distance. "Who do you think you are?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly drew her sword again. Hiss! A sword ray flashed across the battlefield. In the distant sky, Demon Yan's expression changed. The demon wings on her back suddenly flapped, and she turned into a black light and disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Arrow suddenly stabbed his sword to the right. Boom! Along with the sound of an explosion, a black figure instantly retreated a few hundred meters. It was Demon Yen. After Demon Yen stopped, her expression became solemn. She and Arrow were both rulers. She originally thought that her strength was on par with Arrow, but now it seemed that Arrow's combat strength was far above hers. Swordsman. Among those in the same realm, Swordsman was the strongest. Arrow looked at the distant Wu clan and frowned. If this continued, the Wu clan would suffer a crushing defeat. Just as Arrow was about to draw her sword, Demon Yen and God Emperor appeared in front of her. Demon Yen looked at Arrow. Arrow, why do you want to get involved in this mess? You. Arrow suddenly said, you talk too much. With that, she turned into a sword ray and flew out. Demon Yen narrowed her eyes. Let's work together to stop her. With that, she and God Emperor disappeared on the spot. Although the two of them worked together, they were still suppressed by Arrow. And completely suppressed. The two of them could only passively defend against Arrow. However, Arrow had no way to help. The people she brought were also blocked by the experts of the Demon Clan and God Clan. In the distant city, Amu's expression was incomparably gloomy. If this continued, the Wu clan would be completely annihilated. Because there were more and more dark beings. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Amu. Amu's eyes flashed with surprise. You? Chapter 1109. The person who had come was none other than the mutated beast scripture. The mutated beast scripture that had always been at odds with Yi Xian. The mutated beast scripture looked at Amu and said calmly, "Do you need help?" Amu nodded. Yes. The mutated beast scripture looked up at the densely packed dark creatures. After a moment of silence, she suddenly roared, 10,000 beasts, emerge. With that, she suddenly transformed into a huge teleportation array. In an instant, countless beasts rushed out of the teleportation array. Densely packed beasts. At this moment, all the beasts in the mutated beast scripture rushed out. With the addition of these beasts, the Wu clan powerhouses immediately felt much more at ease. Amu's expression also relaxed slightly, but it quickly became serious again. On the horizon, the one-legged woman beside Xiao Dao suddenly said softly, "Why did the mutated beast scripture make a move?" Xiao Dao said calmly, "She chose a side." The one-legged woman looked at Xiao Dao. "Yi Xian?" Xiao Dao said with a smile, "Isn't that obvious?" As she spoke, she looked at the one-legged woman. "Aren't you choosing a side?" The one-legged woman fell silent. In the distance, with the addition of the beasts brought by the mutated beast scripture, the situation on the field changed a little. However, the dark creatures kept coming out. Gradually, the beasts and the Wu clan were suppressed again. Below, Amu looked at the horizon. She frowned. There were simply too many of these dark creatures. Where did they come from? At this moment, a woman appeared beside Amu. The person who had come was the Protoss Divine Master, Qian. Qian looked at the horizon. The next moment, powerful auras suddenly surged in from all directions. The Celestials had made their move. Soon, countless celestial powerhouses appeared on the field. As the celestial powerhouses made their move, the situation on the field was instantly reversed. Amu looked at Qian. "Thank you." Qian said nothing. She had three choices. Choose to stand with Shingon and destroy the Wu clan. It had to be said that this was very tempting, because now that the Wu clan was being besieged, if the Celestials joined Shingon, destroying the Wu clan wouldn't be too difficult. The second choice was to wait and see. They would let the Wu clan and Shingon suffer heavy losses, and the Tian clan would preserve their strength. The third option was to help the Wu clan. In the end, she chose to help the Wu clan. Helping the Wu clan was equivalent to helping Yi Xian. With the addition of the celestial race, although there were many dark beings, they were still suppressed. Seeing this scene, Shen Gong's face became extremely ugly. He didn't expect that so many people would come to help Yi Xian at this time. Shen Gong looked down and finally looked at the pitch-black space. The dark beings that almost destroyed the universe only have this much ability. After a moment of silence, the pitch-black space violently trembled. In the next moment, several black shadows rushed out from the side. These black shadows were shaped like demonic beasts. Their bodies were the size of small mountains and their bodies were pitch black. The moment they appeared in the sky, the entire sky above the Wu clan became illusory. At the same time, behind these black shadows, there were dozens of ghost-like afterimages. When these afterimages appeared, the experts from the Tian clan and the Witch clan immediately fell at an extremely fast speed. Seeing this scene, a Qian frowned. She suddenly said, "Abzang." The moment her voice fell, Abzang suddenly appeared in front of a Qian. A Qian's face was incomparably pale. "Open the door to Hades." Abzang looked at a Qian. "God teacher, are you serious?" A Qian didn't say anything. Abzang didn't ask any more questions. He turned to look at the sky and clasped his hands together. A moment later, a blood-red door suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, countless vengeful spirits and evil ghosts suddenly rushed out from the blood-red door. These were all evil ghosts imprisoned by Hades. These evil spirits rushed towards the dark specters in the sky in a frenzy. However, these evil spirits were no match for the dark specters. Before they could even get close to the dark specters, they were all slaughtered. At this moment, Hao Tian suddenly looked at Amu. "High Priest, I'll borrow the Divine King's throne." Borrow. It had to be said that Hao Tian's heart was somewhat complicated at this moment. That was originally the celestial race's throne. Amu waved her right hand. "I'll return it to you." With that, the Divine King's throne landed in front of Hao Tian. Hao Tian didn't waste any words. He directly sat on the Divine King's throne and closed his eyes. Then, he suddenly roared, "God domain suppression." Boom! As Hao Tian's voice fell, a powerful force suddenly enveloped the entire sky. God domain. In this God domain, the speed and battle prowess of the dark ghosts were instantly weakened. However, they were still very strong. Not only the dark ghosts, but also the dark giant spirits. These dark giant spirits were huge in size and had great destructive power. The Wu clan and the celestial race still didn't have any advantage. At this moment, Shen Gong suddenly roared, "Still not enough." Just as his voice fell, a middle-aged man suddenly floated out from the pitch-black space behind him. The middle-aged man's body was very similar to a human's. However, his entire body was pitch black, and there were countless black gas lingering around his body. In the middle-aged man's hand, he held a black sickle. The middle-aged man glanced at Shen Gong. Shen Gong said fiercely, "With just you?" The middle-aged man said indifferently, "I'm still rushing over." Shen Gong pointed at Yi Ling below, "Capture that woman. As long as we capture her, we can make that Yi Xian surrender without bloodshed." The middle-aged man looked at Yi Ling below. In the next moment, he directly turned into a black light and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yi Ling. At this moment, a white light suddenly exploded in front of Yi Ling. The middle-aged man fiercely slashed forward with the sickle in his hand. Boom! The white light did not shatter. The middle-aged man explosively retreated hundreds of feet. In front of Yi Ling stood a woman. It was a Qian. Although Amu didn't know how to fight, but a Qian could. Moreover, she was the most capable of fighting in the celestial race. The middle-aged man sized up a Qian and said with a smile, "It's actually a woman." A Qian was incomparably expressionless. "What's wrong with a woman?" As her voice fell, she suddenly disappeared from the spot. In the distance, the middle-aged man's pupils suddenly shrank. He was about to make a move, but at this moment, a moose suddenly shouted angrily, "Freeze!" As soon as her voice fell, the middle-aged man felt his whole body go numb. Although it was only for a moment, this moment was fatal. Before he could react, a white light directly flashed through his throat. Chi! The middle-aged man's head directly flew out. Blood spurted out like a fountain. At the moment when his head flew out, he looked at Amu. Amu blinked. "I don't know how to fight, but I know how to support, hee." The middle-aged man died with his eyes wide open. He was careless. Really careless. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for God Teacher to kill him. God Teacher glanced at Amu, then looked at Shingong in the sky. Shingong's expression was extremely ugly at this moment. It wasn't easy for a strong person to appear, and he was gone just like that. Shingong's face was expressionless. What a big idiot. The battle was still going on. Currently, both sides were evenly matched. However, the expressions of Amu and Qian became more and more solemn, because those dark creatures were still there. They were continuously coming from the spatial crack. They were really endless. If this continued, even the Celestial Clan and the Demon Clan would be forcefully exhausted to death. Qian said softly, "This is not the way to go on." Amu nodded. These dark creatures were endless. Moreover, that Shingong was obviously still waiting for even more powerful dark creatures to come out. If this continued, both the Wu clan and the Celestial Clan would be finished. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from the transmission array behind Shingong. Then, a shadow floated out. Seeing this shadow, everyone's expression instantly changed. Even Shingong's expression became somewhat solemn at this moment. The shadow took a deep breath greedily and said softly, "The world that I haven't seen for a long time." Shingong pointed at Yiling below, "Control this person, and you can control the Yi Xian." The shadow looked at Yiling below, and in the next moment, he disappeared from the spot. Swoosh! A huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky above Shaman City. In front of Yiling, Qian held a white staff and pointed it forward. At the tip of the staff, a ray of white light poured out. At this moment, a fist suddenly hit the ray of white light. Boom! The white light shattered with a bang. In front of Qian, the shadow was about to attack again. At this moment, Amu suddenly chanted an incantation. In the next moment, the shadow's body froze. When she saw this, Qian suddenly punched the shadow's head. However, her punch hit nothing but air. Because the shadow had already retreated to the front of Shingong. The shadow turned to look at Amu. Amu blinked and said, "He fled." Shingong spoke in a low voice, "We must capture that Yiling. Only this woman can make Yi Xian submit." The shadow glanced at Amu and Qian, "We must deal with these two women first." Shingong glanced at Wu Shi and shook his head, "If I attack, then he will attack as well." The shadow fell silent for a moment, and then he suddenly turned around to look at the teleportation formation. Suddenly, an old man walked out from within the teleportation formation. The shadow was stunned when he saw the old man, and then he said, "Elder Chen, you're here as well?" Elder Chen glanced below, "Capture that Yi Xian as soon as possible." The shadow spoke in a low voice, "Master, what do you mean?" Elder Chen nodded, "His identity isn't simple. We must control him." The shadow nodded, "Capture his younger sister, and you'll be able to control him. However, that woman's strength isn't inferior to mine." Elder Chen said, "You keep her busy. I'll do the rest." The shadow nodded slightly, "All right." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Qian spoke in a low voice, "Take care." As soon as she finished speaking, she transformed into a ray of white light that shot into the sky. Amu looked up into the sky. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly appeared in front of Yiling, and he smashed his fist towards Yiling. A shield suddenly appeared in front of Yiling. The Taiji shield. The old man's fist smashed against the Taiji shield, causing it to tremble violently, and Yi Ling was pushed 300 m back. On the other hand, the old man was pushed over 30 m back as well. The old man frowned slightly, and then he charged forward once more in the next moment. In the distance, the one-legged woman suddenly looked at Xiao Dao. Will Tendo really not show herself? Xiao Dao spoke softly, if it's just Shengong, then she might not show herself. However, she can't just ignore the appearance of these dark creatures. Moreover, she still hasn't shown herself. There's only one explanation. The one-legged woman spoke in a low voice, she's in trouble. P.S. I've been updating on time lately. Commendable. Chapter 11:10. At this moment, the battle had reached its climax in the sky above Shaman City. Elder Chen charged towards Yi Ling again and again, but he was still unable to break Yi Ling's Tai Chi shield. Right at this moment, Arrow forced Demon Yen and God Emperor back with one slash of her sword, and both of them were pushed back a total of 10,000 feet. Arrow turned around to look in Yi Ling's direction. When she saw Elder Chen charge towards Yi Ling once again, she suddenly swept her sword horizontally across her throat. Hiss! A ripping sound resounded in the battlefield. In the distant sky, Elder Chen's expression changed drastically as he charged towards Yi Ling. He stopped abruptly, and at the same time, his throat was suddenly torn open and blood gushed out. Elder Chen instantly retreated 10,000 feet back. Once he stopped, he turned around to look at Arrow in the sky, and his gaze was incredibly solemn. At this moment, Shengong was looking at Arrow as well. Arrow's strength had truly exceeded his expectations. Arrow walked over to Yi Ling. She raised her head to look at the dark living beings that covered the sky, and her expression was incredibly gloomy. As if she'd thought of something, Arrow turned around to look at Amu. How much longer does he have? Amu glanced at the grave and said, he still needs some time. A period. Luo slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, Arrow suddenly looked towards the sky. Retreat. Right after she finished speaking, Amu hurriedly said, all members of the Wu clan and Tian clan, retreat. In the sky, the powerful warriors of the Wu clan and Tian clan retreated swiftly. Arrow opened her palm, and the eternal sword suddenly appeared in her hand. She looked towards the sky, and a vicious glint flashed in her eyes. Sword to destroy the heavens. As soon as she finished speaking, the eternal sword in her hand suddenly transformed into a ray of light that charged into the sky. Shengong's expression instantly changed drastically when he saw this ray of light, and he hurriedly shouted furiously, block this sword. As he spoke, he was about to attack, but he didn't in the end. Because he sensed danger. His intuition told him that he couldn't take this strike. Elder Chen didn't take the attack head on. Just like that, the sword shot into the sky, and then it transformed into countless rays of light that shot towards the surroundings. Chi 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 wrong. In an instant, the sound of something slicing rang out in the sky. As these sounds rang out, countless dark beings fell. Below, countless people watched this scene in horror. This sword was too terrifying. On the horizon, the one-legged woman said softly, what a powerful arrow. Xiao Dao nodded. No wonder he is the best fighter in the Cambrian era. In the distance, Arrow's sword had killed at least 100,000 dark creatures. When the dark spirits in the sky looked at Arrow, their eyes were filled with fear. Shengong glanced at Arrow, then turned to Elder Chen. Elder Chen remained silent. Shengong said calmly, if you want to give up, I will leave now. If these shadowy creatures stopped attacking, he would turn around and leave. Because at this moment, they weren't able to gain any advantage. Elder Chen remained silent for a long time before he turned to look at the teleportation formation. After a short while, the teleportation formation suddenly trembled, and it didn't take long for a woman to walk out of it. She wore a black dress and looked no different from a human. She held a sword in her hand as well. This sword was black. Elder Chen's expression changed when he saw the woman walk out, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, emissary Black Sword." The woman's gaze descended onto Arrow, and then the sword in her hand slashed down like a bolt of lightning. Arrow drew his sword and stabbed forward. Bang! A ray of light suddenly erupted in front of Arrow. Meanwhile, the emissary Black Sword's body suddenly became illusory, and then a dense expanse of afterimages appeared in the sky. Meanwhile, Arrow's right foot spun lightly, and his figure transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. Two sword winds suddenly rose in the air, and soon after, an endless amount of sword glares sliced through the sky above Shaman City. These sword glares were like shooting stars that intersected with each other, and in just a moment, the entire sky above Shaman City turned into a dark space. Elder Chen was about to speak when another woman walked out from the pitch-black hole. She wore a black dress, her face was covered, and there was a black saber hanging from her waist. Elder Chen's expression changed once more, and he hurriedly bowed. "Emissary Black Sword." The woman didn't speak. She just looked at Arrow. Meanwhile, Shengong suddenly pointed at Yi Ling. "Capture this person, and we'll be able to make Yi Xian submit to us." The emissary Black Sword's gaze moved down and fell on Yi Ling. In the next moment, she vanished on the spot, and a blade energy that was tens of thousands of feet long slashed down from the sky. Amu narrowed his eyes slightly. "Block this blade." The moment the powerful warriors of the Wu clan and the Tian clan moved, Shengong and the others disappeared from the spot once more. At that moment, there was no one left on the side of the Wu clan and the Tian clan. Yi Ling looked at the blade energy descending on her. She swung her right hand, and the Taiji shield suddenly flew up. The blade arrived. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly resounded through the sky. The Taiji shield had forcefully withstood the Saber Envoy's attack, but Yi Ling's face instantly turned pale. The emissary Black Sword swung down again. Boom! At that moment, Yi Ling and the Taiji shield retreated nearly 10,000 feet. The emissary Black Sword was about to attack again when a woman appeared before her. The one-legged woman. The emissary Black Sword looked at the one-legged woman, and without a single word, she drew her blade and swung it down. The blade was incredibly fast, and it disappeared in an instant. The one-legged woman closed her eyes slightly and threw a punch. Boom! The blade energy suddenly stopped in front of the one-legged woman, then exploded. The one-legged woman threw another punch. The space in front of her directly turned into nothingness. The emissary frowned, and her right hand suddenly drew her blade and slashed down. This time, she used both hands. Boom! As the blade energy exploded, the two women instantly retreated, and this retreat took them several thousand feet each. In the distant sky, Shengong suddenly shouted, "Who are you?" Ah! At this moment, he was on the verge of collapse. After capturing Yi Xian, first the Wu clan protected him, then the mutant beast scripture came to help, then the Tian clan, then the undefeatable Arrow, and now this one-legged woman. Why were there so many people helping Yi Xian? And each one was stronger than the last. What was wrong with this world? The one-legged woman ignored Shengong and looked at the emissary Black Sword in front of her. The emissary placed her right hand on the hilt of her blade, and a powerful aura gathered in her blade. The emissary suddenly drew her blade. Chi! The space in front of the one-legged woman suddenly split open, and at this moment, the one-legged woman threw a punch. A fist energy flashed on her fist. Rumble! The surrounding space suddenly trembled violently. The one-legged woman retreated frantically, and the black blade emissary also retreated rapidly. As she retreated, the one-legged woman narrowed her eyes. She suddenly raised her right hand towards the sky. Star condensation. Once he finished speaking, an endless amount of starlight gathered towards the sky above Shaman City like a tidal wave from the galaxy in the distance. Very soon, an endless amount of starlight gathered together to form the mark of a fist. He kicked the woman's head. The one-legged woman looked at the black blade envoy in the distance. Without any nonsense, she punched out. The starlight fist seal suddenly swept out. In the distance, the black blade envoy narrowed her eyes. Her right hand suddenly gripped the hilt of her blade, and then she pulled it out, slashing again and again. Chi 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 chi. Ripping sounds resounded incessantly as strand after strand of saber energy slashed incessantly towards the fist. Boom boom boom. Explosions resounded incessantly. Suddenly, the woman vanished on the spot. The black blade user also disappeared on the spot. The speed of the two was so fast that it was impossible to follow with the naked eye. In the sky, Shengong suddenly gazed at Elder Chen, continue calling for reinforcements. Elder Chen glanced at Shengong. Why aren't you calling for reinforcements? Shengong spoke fiercely. Most of the experts from the era of Tendo have been sealed by Tendo. If Yi Xian doesn't show himself, then they won't be able to escape at all. Elder Chen fell silent. Shengong continued, most of the experts have been kept busy, so we can seize this opportunity to annihilate them in one go. Otherwise, they'll definitely become a huge problem. Elder Chen glanced down, and then he turned his head to look at the pitch-black hole. He remained silent for a moment before he said, Lord? After a moment passed, the pitch-black hole suddenly started trembling. Amu's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. More experts are about to escape. Exactly what sort of power is this? Suddenly, a black-robed figure appeared not too far away from Shengong. Xiao Dao frowned when she saw the black-robed figure, and she seemed to have noticed something. Her eyes narrowed slightly. It's not a living being of darkness. Even I don't know. It's not from this world. Her pupils constricted when she spoke up to this point. I've discovered the secret of the study room. The black-robed figure suddenly gazed at Xiao Dao, and then he gazed at Xiao Dao. May I know if you intend to interfere? Everyone looked in the direction of the small path when they heard this. Xiao Dao. That extremely mysterious woman. Amu was gazing at Xiao Dao as well. Actually, she'd noticed Xiao Dao's existence a long time ago, but she hadn't asked for his help. Because she knew that if Xiao Dao intended to act, then he would definitely act. If he didn't, then it would be pointless no matter what she said. Xiao Dao gazed at the black-robed figure. What do you think? The black-robed figure smiled. We've investigated you. Even though we don't know your origins, we do know that you're heavily injured right now. If you act now, then it'll be extremely disadvantageous to you. So, you better think it through. Xiao Dao smiled. You've even investigated me. Interesting. The black-robed figure nodded. We've investigated all the experts in this world. That woman is gone, so no one can threaten us anymore. He paused for a moment and continued, you're only half. Fortunately, you're heavily injured right now, so you're not that much of a threat to us. However, we don't want to offend you as well. So long as you don't interfere, then we'll be fine. Xiao Dao gazed at the black-robed figure. What if I interfere? The black-robed figure nodded. Then please provide me with your guidance. Xiao Dao roared with laughter. Looks like I have to take a side as well. The black-robed figure gazed at Xiao Dao. He doesn't seem to have any advantage without that woman. Xiao Dao blinked. Is that so? The black-robed figure spoke indifferently. Since you intend to interfere, then please provide me with your guidance. The corners of Xiao Dao's mouth curled up slightly, and then she vanished on the spot. Chapter 11:11. As soon as Xiao Dao vanished, the black-robed figure vanished as well. Two afterimages streaked across the sky. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion resounded in the sky, and the black-robed figure instantly retreated over 3 kilometers away. When he stopped, the space behind him trembled violently and then cracked open. The expressions of Shengong and the others darkened at the sight of this. Especially Demon Yen and God Emperor. At this moment, both of them were slightly regretful. They hadn't expected that so many experts would come to Yi Xian's aid at this moment. If Shen Gong hadn't recruited so many experts, the Fiend Clan and God Spirit Clan wouldn't have been a match for him at all. Although they were slightly regretful, they had no way out at this moment. In the distance, the black-robed figure gazed at Xiao Dao. She slowly clenched her fists and said softly, "I never expected you to be so strong." Xiao Dao smiled, "Is that so?" The black-robed figure chuckled, "But it's really unwise for you to interfere in this matter." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly soared into the sky. Suddenly, a ghostly face appeared in front of him. In an instant, the entire space between the heavens and the earth became illusory. In the distance, the smile on Xiao Dao's face gradually vanished. "It's not the power of this world." The black-robed figure laughed, "Your Excellency is truly knowledgeable." As soon as he finished speaking, he lightly pointed at Xiao Dao, "Go." As soon as he finished speaking, the ghostly face suddenly flew out. As soon as it flew out, it grew explosively in the air and instantly became thousands of meters tall. The space in its path was instantly reduced to nothingness. It was an extremely shocking sight. Xiao Dao took a step forward and pointed a finger forward. A speck of white light suddenly appeared on her fingertip. Bang! The ghostly face trembled violently and was forced to a stop by the speck of white light. However, it didn't dissipate. On the contrary, the speck of white light around Xiao Dao gradually became illusory. Xiao Dao's eyes narrowed slightly. She suddenly withdrew her hand, and the ghostly face drowned her. Everyone present was stunned. Even the black-robed figure was slightly stunned. Right at this moment, boom! The ghost face suddenly exploded, and Xiao Dao appeared in front of everyone again. Beside her, there were some tiny dots of light. These dots of light were so tiny that ordinary people wouldn't be able to notice them at all. However, the black-robed man still discovered it. Xiao Dao looked at the black-robed man. The black-robed man said in a deep voice, "You are hiding your true strength. Who the hell are you?" Xiao Dao lightly waved her jade-like hand, and a surge of energy quietly disappeared. She smiled, "Are you all so curious about my identity?" The black-robed man chuckled and said, "Sir, I really don't understand. Why did you come to help Yi Xian?" Xiao Dao looked straight at the black-robed man, his smile fading. "It's simple, because I don't think you have a chance of winning." The black-robed man suddenly laughed out loud. His laughter was unbridled. After laughing for a moment, he looked at Xiao Dao. "Your Excellency, you know nothing about us." Xiao Dao shook his head. "No, I know too much." The black-robed man smiled and said, "Do you know the woman in the plain dress who left earlier? Do you know what she will face now?" Xiao Dao looked at the black-robed man. "I know. You deliberately provoked her to leave this world. You definitely want to deal with her." The black-robed man nodded. "Once she goes up, she will undoubtedly die." Xiao Dao shook his head. "If you say that, then we have nothing to talk about." The black-robed man stared at Xiao Dao. "What do you mean?" Xiao Dao chuckled. "What I mean is that you all did well. You all did very well." The black-robed man looked at Xiao Dao. After a moment, he suddenly opened his palm. In his palm, a small golden sword appeared. On the tip of the sword, there was a small red dot. The moment the small sword appeared, the surrounding space directly shattered. Seeing this scene, the surrounding experts' expressions changed. They all retreated. Down below, Mu also frowned. What divine artifact? At this time, a Qian appeared beside her. A Qian looked at the black-robed man in the sky. "I'm afraid these people are not from the fifth dimension." "Not from the fifth dimension." Mu was silent. She had already thought of this point. At this time, Xiao Dao suddenly laughed. "They are not from the sixth dimension either." Mu looked at Xiao Dao. They are from the 5th dimension, but they are related to the 6th dimension. Xiao Dao smiled. Smart. The black-robed man suddenly laughed. This sword was originally used to deal with the plain-dressed woman. However, since she has left, I will use it to deal with you. As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed with his fingers. Go. As soon as he finished speaking, the small golden sword suddenly flew out. Chi. Wherever the small sword passed, it tore apart everything, destroying heaven and earth. Everyone in the surroundings was visibly moved when they witnessed this scene. The power of this small sword was too strong. Not to mention killing a person, it could easily destroy the entire nothingness dimension. Xiao Dao chuckled. You want to use this thing to deal with her? I'm afraid you are dreaming. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm. In her hand, a flying knife appeared. The next moment, this flying knife suddenly flew out. Boom! In the sky, a blade light and a sword light suddenly exploded, and the entire sky turned pitch black. Spatial annihilation. Meanwhile, the small golden sword had returned to the black-robed man's hand. Looking at the cracked small golden sword in his hand, the black-robed man's eyes were filled with horror. This small golden sword did not belong to this universe. Cracked. The black-robed man looked at Xiao Dao with an extremely solemn expression. Who the hell are you? But at this moment, little Daoist's body suddenly became illusory. In the distance, the black-robed man's expression changed greatly. He stabbed forward with the small golden sword in his hand. On the small sword, a sword light erupted like a scorching sun. Little Daoist put her fingers together. She pointed out, and on her fingertip, there was a flying dagger. This flying knife directly slashed the sword light. Boom! The sword light instantly shattered, and the next moment, the flying knife flashed past the black-robed man's throat. Chi! The black-robed man's head flew into the air, but his soul had fled at the instant that his body was destroyed. Xiao Dao gazed at the black-robed man's soul. She was just about to attack when an extremely powerful aura suddenly arose from within the pitch-black space behind Shengong. Xiao Dao frowned slightly. A moment later, a fist flashed out from within the teleportation formation. Xiao Dao lightly swept 2 fingers forward. Hiss! The fist imprint shattered, but the little Daoist retreated thousands of feet. Once she stopped moving, her brows knit together slightly while her face turned slightly pale. Xiao Dao raised her head and gazed at the pitch-black space in the distance. An illusory middle-aged man had walked out from within the teleportation formation. The middle-aged man wore a large black robe, had his hands behind his back, and a small, dark character was inscribed at the center of his forehead. All the living beings of the darkness stopped moving when they saw the middle-aged man, and they bowed to him. Greetings, Lord Skyless. Lord Skyless. Xiao Dao frowned when she heard this. She knew this person. During the era of the Tendo, this person was quite famous. He declared that he would destroy the Tendo and turn the entire 5th dimension into the dark world. Thus, he'd changed his name to Skyless. In the dark world, his strength was ranked in the top 3. He'd been personally suppressed by the Tendo all those years ago. She hadn't expected that he'd come out as well. Did something really happen to the Tendo? Xiao Dao frowned. If she was given some time, then she could investigate it. After Skyless appeared, the Black Sword Emissary and the Black Blade Emissary appeared on either side of him. However, their gazes were fixed on Arrow and the one-legged woman. Arrow's face was expressionless. The eternal sword in his hand trembled slightly, and he was ready to be unsheathed at any moment. The one-legged woman's expression was calm, and there wasn't a trace of emotion in her eyes. Skyless looked at Xiao Dao. Miss Xiao Dao, our dark world has never had any enmity with you. Why are you interfering in this matter? Xiao Dao smiled. If you like it, then so be it. Skyless, where's your lord? Has he recovered from his battle with the Tendo? Skyless smiled. thank you for your concern, Miss Xiao Dao. Lord is fine. Xiao Dao looked at Skyless. With your strength, you can't threaten the Tendo. You dare to appear in this universe so brazenly. There's someone behind you. Skyless smiled. Can't I? Xiao Dao said in a deep voice. Something happened to the Tendo. Skyless smiled. What do you think? Xiao Dao smiled. Good skill. Coming out without a sound, causing trouble to the Tendo without a sound, and letting the plain-dressed woman leave this world. You're really amazing. Skyless whispered. Miss Xiao Dao, with your knowledge, you should know the use of the study room. I'm curious, why didn't you seize the study room? Xiao Dao shrugged. I'm afraid of death. Skyless smiled. Are you talking about the plain-dressed woman? Xiao Dao looked at Skyless. How are you going to deal with her? Skyless chuckled. If it's in this world, we're still afraid of her. Unfortunately, she's arrogant and wants to break into the upper realm. This is exactly what the higher-ups want. As long as she goes to the upper realm, she'll definitely die. Xiao Dao was silent. At this moment, she was mourning for the higher-ups. Underestimating the plain-dressed woman. In fact, everyone underestimated this woman. Including her. She didn't underestimate, but she really didn't know how strong this woman was. Even she didn't know, how terrifying was this. Not to mention this world, even her family couldn't afford to offend the plain-dressed woman. At this time, in the distance, Skyless suddenly smiled. Miss Xiao Dao, we have no intention of being enemies with you. As long as you don't make a move, we will never offend you. Xiao Dao looked at Skyless. What if I want to make a move? Skyless smiled. Miss Xiao Dao, I won't hide it from you. Today, we must take this Yi Xian away. He's the lord of the human realm and has a great relationship with the prophet. We must get him. When the plain-dressed woman was still here, we were still a bit afraid. But now, no one can protect him. Although Miss Xiao Dao's strength is strong, you're just one person. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly emerged from the pitch-black spatial hole behind him. Not long after, 11 strong people dressed in black appeared behind Skyless. Seeing these 11 people, Xiao Dao's face instantly sank. Not only Xiao Dao, but Arrow and the one-legged woman's face also sank at this moment. The strength of these 11 people is perhaps only second to her, Xiao Dao, and the one-legged woman. Adding Skyless and the others, the strength of their side can be said to be completely crushed. Whether it's in quantity or quality. Skyless looked at Xiao Dao and the others and smiled. Sorry, we have a lot of people. Is that so? Suddenly, a ray of light descended here. The ray of light dispersed, and an old man appeared before them. It was the Sword Sect's Elder Gu. Elder Gu gazed at Skyless. I heard you have a lot of people. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a small sword suddenly shot into the sky. It didn't take long for the small sword to vanish into the starry sky. P.S. I heard you have a lot of tickets. Chapter 11-12. Xiao Dao's expression eased up slightly when he saw old Gu. If the old geezer still didn't show himself, then the matter would truly be difficult to resolve. The Sword Sect. She knew a little about this ancient power, Dao Yi, and she was probably the only one who knew a little about Dao Yi. Because the place the Sword Sect resided at was too special. Outsiders were utterly unaware of it. Moreover, the reason she knew about this power was because of that white little fellow. All those years ago, she'd been extremely proud and arrogant. So, her first thought upon seeing that white little fellow was to seize him from her. Unfortunately, she'd overlooked the little girl and the green-clothed man by the little fellow's side. And that white-robed woman as well. It was a tragic experience. Moreover, the green-clothed man was the sect master of the Sword Sect. If there was anyone in this universe who could resist the sword of the woman in a plain dress, then the green-clothed man was one of them. But the problem was that both of them were related to Yi Xian. She felt speechless when she thought about all of this. Wu Tian gazed at Old Gu. Where did you come from? Old Gu laughed coldly. You want to take my young sect master? Have you asked my sword sect? Wu Tian frowned. The sword sect? What's that? Suddenly, a sword howl resounded from the depths of the starry sky. Everyone turned their heads to look towards the starry sky, and they saw 12 rays of light there. It didn't take long for those 12 rays of light to pass through space and appear here. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when they saw these 12 people, including Xiao Dao. All 12 swordsmen were at the mortal sword realm. Even though besides the man in the lead, the others were only at the first level of the mortal sword realm, how terrifying was that? Moreover, the swordsman in the lead was even at the peak of the second level of the mortal sword realm. Most importantly, all of them were at the ruler realm. Their cultivations were at the peak of the mortal sword realm as well. A Qian who stood by Amu's side spoke softly. Where did they come from? His voice carried a trace of shock. Amu blinked. It's mine. A Qian looked at Amu. Amu grinned. Didn't you hear what that old man said? My family's young sect master. I'm their young sect master, so these belong to my family. A Qian glanced at Amu. When did you become so thick-skinned? Amu, a Qian suddenly said, I'm your sister, right? Amu nodded, we are sisters. A Qian said softly, then they are still our family. Amu looked at a Qian. When he saw the 12 swordsmen, Skyla's expression turned extremely ugly. 12 swordsmen. Moreover, all of them were ordinary swords, and they were all at the sovereign realm. Where did all this come from? Shengong's face was also extremely ugly. At this moment, he really wanted to curse. Was there no end to this? How many helpers did this Yi Xian have? Moreover, each one was more abnormal than the other. Was this Yi Xian the reincarnation of a Tendo? Even if he was the reincarnation of a Tendo, it wouldn't be this exaggerated, right? Demon Yen and God Emperor's expressions were also extremely ugly. The appearance of these 12 people made them understand one thing. That was why Xiao Dao and the others wanted to help Yi Xian. The people behind this guy were not just the plain-dressed woman. Who was he? Old Gu looked at the man in the lead. Senior brother Gu Nye, where is senior brother Lu Yunxian? The man called Gu Nye smiled. He has a mission, so I came. Old Gu said solemnly, where is the sect master? Gu Nye said softly, the sect master went to a very far place. As he spoke, he glanced at the scene. Where is little junior brother? Old Gu pointed at the tomb in the distance. Little junior brother is charging into the rebirth realm now. Gu Nye glanced at the tomb while a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. The second level of the mortal sword realm? Old Gu nodded. Gu Nye roared with laughter. He really is an extraordinary genius. As he spoke, he turned around to look at Wu Tian. What did you say my sword sect is? Let me tell you what my sword sect is. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. In the distance, Wu Tian's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly pressed his palms together. Boundless world of darkness. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of black light instantly enveloped him and Gu Nye. At this moment, a ray of sword light tore through the black light, and then it appeared in front of Skyless. Wu Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he stomped his right foot. Domain. As soon as he finished speaking, a shapeless force suddenly enveloped the ray of light. Right at this moment, the ray of light suddenly trembled violently, and it directly destroyed the domain. At this moment, Wu Tian was horrified in his heart, and he hurriedly flashed backwards. However, it was still slightly too late, and the ray of light had directly slashed apart his body. Wu Tian, who was already in soul form, retreated explosively by almost 3 kilometers. Gu Nye held the sword in his hand as he looked at Wu Tian. He smiled. Now do you know what the sword sect is? Wu Tian stared fixedly at Gu Nye. Then do you know who's behind us? Gu Nye smiled. Our sword sect is fearless. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the 12 swordsmen behind him. Kill. The 12 swordsmen immediately transformed into 12 rays of light that charged forward. Meanwhile, Amu spoke abruptly. All the experts of the Wu clan, attack. Don't leave a single one alive. A Qian's voice resounded along with it. All the experts of the Tian clan, listen up. Kill. Don't leave a single one alive. The variant beast scripture led the beasts to charge forward as well. Arrow waved her right hand lightly, and the undefeated army behind her charged forward. This time, Yi Xian's side was completely crushed. Because the combat strength of the 12 swordsmen in the lead was truly too terrifying. These swordsmen could really fight 10 enemies by themselves, and they were practically invincible in the same realm of cultivation. They were completely crushed. The expressions of Shengong and the others instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. If this continued, then they would be annihilated in less than an hour. Right at this moment, Wu Tian suddenly shouted furiously. Retreat! Retreat! They had no choice but to retreat now because they'd severely underestimated their opponents. The experts of the Dark World retreated in unison when they heard Wu Tian. Demon Yen and God Emperor led their forces away when they witnessed this scene. Amu suddenly said, "Stop them." Gu Nye suddenly transformed into a ray of light that charged towards Wu Tian. Wu Tian didn't hesitate at all when he saw Gu Nye charge over, and he transformed into a ray of black light that vanished within the teleportation formation. The current him was not Gu Nyen's match at all. The Black Sword Emissary and the others by her side also turned around and left. Soon, the experts of the Dark World disappeared into the horizon like a tide. However, many had died. Countless corpses of Dark World experts fell from the sky like it was raining. Fresh blood dyed the entire sky red. As for Gu Nye, he directly rushed into the teleportation array. The 12 swordsmen behind him also wanted to follow, but at this moment, a sword light floated out. The sword light dissipated. It was ancient sin. Gu Nye looked at the man who had died. The spatial teleportation array disappeared and said softly, "It's not the power of this world." Old Gu appeared beside Gu Nye, and he looked at the spatial teleportation formation and said in a low voice, "Many forces are targeting the young sect master." Gu Nye turned to look at the tomb and said softly, "Young sect master's karma is not simple." No wonder sect master went there personally, Old Man Gu said in a deep voice. "Is sect master running around for young sect master's matter?" Gu Nye nodded. Hearing this, Old Man Gu furrowed his brows. "Even the sect leader can't solve it?" Gu Nye said softly, "It's not that simple." Old Man Gu's face sank when he heard this. He was very clear about the sect leader's strength. If even the sect leader couldn't solve it, then the matter was really quite serious. Right at this moment, Xiao Dao appeared by Gu Nyen's side. She looked at Gu Nye and said, "Where's your sect leader?" Gu Nye looked at Xiao Dao and said with a smile, "Sect leader has gone somewhere else. He's been gone for a very long time." Xiao Dao frowned slightly. That little girl and the little white fellow went with him. A trace of surprise flashed in Gu Nyen's eyes. "Young miss knows them?" Xiao Dao nodded. "I've seen them a few times." Gu Nye nodded slightly. "We haven't seen sect leader for a very long time as well." As he spoke, he turned to glance at the corpses of the dark living beings below. "Young miss, do you know who released these dark living beings?" Xiao Dao said softly, "It should be someone from the ascendant dimension that interfered." Gu Nye frowned slightly. "We've never allowed anyone from the ascendant dimension to come down here." Xiao Dao looked at Gu Nye. "All of you have been standing guard there." Gu Nye nodded. Xiao Dao said in a light voice, "It isn't your problem." Gu Nye asked, "Young miss, what do you mean?" Xiao Dao glanced at the depths of the starry sky and said, "They probably snuck in from somewhere else. It's best that all of you investigate after you return. Something isn't right." As she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes narrowed slightly. All of you better be careful. Gun Yen said in a low voice, young miss, you mean that they might be targeting us? Xiao Dao nodded, the fifth dimension tribulation is about to arrive, and the hearts of the people are in chaos. It's the best opportunity for them to make a move. Gun Yen hesitated for a moment and said, has that woman in a plain dress really left? Xiao Dao nodded. Gun Yen sighed lightly. Originally, the woman in a plain dress was the last person in this universe that could deter the myriad of worlds in the universe. But now that she'd left, the matter was extraordinarily troublesome. Xiao Dao looked at Gun Yen, can all of you come over? Gun Yen shook his head, no. If we leave that place, then this universe will be even more dangerous. Xiao Dao frowned slightly. All of you are unable to annihilate them with your strength? Gun Yen laughed bitterly, they never fight us head-on, and they just hide. But so long as we relax, they'll come out, and we're helpless against them. Xiao Dao said in a low voice, can't we kill our way over? Gun Yen shook his head, we've tried in the past. That place is too chaotic, and it's extremely far. They hide everywhere, and we're helpless against them. Xiao Dao suddenly said, all of you go back. Gun Yen gazed at Xiao Dao, and Xiao Dao said in a light voice, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Understand? Gun Yen's eyes narrowed slightly. They intend to act against us? Xiao Dao said in a low voice, they don't have the strength, but what if they play tricks? Gun Yen fell silent for a short moment, and then he said, I originally intended to take junior brother away this time, but Xiao Dao shook her head, if all of you take him away, then the matter will become even more serious. As she spoke, she turned to glance at the tomb and said in a light voice, that study room was brought by the prophet from above. This prophet, in the words of that little girl, he's truly a sly old bastard. Chapter 11-13. Gun Yen blinked when he heard Xiao Dao, sly bastard? What do you mean? Xiao Dao spoke indifferently, I mean very sly. Gun Yen was speechless. Xiao Dao suddenly said, what did you encounter when you entered the teleportation formation just now? Gun Yen spoke in a low voice, a formidable force, and the person who attacked isn't from this dimension. Xiao Dao's beautiful brows knit together slightly. Gun Yen gazed at the tomb in the distance and spoke softly, it's truly dangerous for junior brother to stay here. Xiao Dao shook his head, this is the path he chose. Gun Yen grinned, just like the sect master did all those years ago. Fine, I won't be taking him with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he cupped his fists to everyone here, everyone, we still have an assignment to carry out, so we'll be leaving first. If you have the chance, please come to the Sword Sect to be our guests. We'll meet again in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, he and the 12 others behind him transformed into 12 rays of light that vanished into the starry sky. They're gone. Everyone here exchanged glances with each other. Needless to say, all of them were extremely shocked right now. That was too terrifying. 12 mortal swordsmen. Such a lineup was truly heaven-defying. Hao Tian and the others felt a slight lingering fear in their hearts. Fortunately, they hadn't joined forces with Demon Yen and the others. Otherwise, the Tian race would have probably been finished. The Sword Sect. At this moment, everyone throughout the fifth dimension knew of the Sword Sect. Amu walked over to Variant Beast Scripture, and then she bowed slightly, thank you, young miss, for coming to help us. We'll remember this kindness. Variant Beast Scripture spoke in a low voice, is it all right for me to stay here with the Wu clan? Amu blinked, and then she hurriedly said, of course. You can stay here. Feel free to let me know if you need anything. Variant Beast Scripture glanced at the tomb and said, let's wait for him to come out. Amu nodded, all right. She knew that Variant Beast Scripture had definitely come to help because of Yi Xian. The Wu clan didn't have that much influence. Amu walks in front of Arrow, she once again bows, many thanks to Miss Arrow for coming to help. Arrow sheathed his sword and said softly, "We're on the same side, there's no need to be like this." Amu smiled and said, "Understood." They were on the same side. Arrow was here to help. He was really here to help. Of course, no matter what the reason was, the Wu clan and Yi Xian should be grateful to those who came to help. Amu looked at Xiao Dao and the one-legged woman. Xiao Dao said softly, "Don't celebrate too early. Those people won't give up." Amu nodded. "I understand. Miss Xiao Dao, may I ask you a few questions?" Xiao Dao looked at Amu. "You want to know the background of those people?" Amu nodded slightly. "Yes." Xiao Dao said softly, that Shengong was the righteous god of the Tendo era. In the Tendo era, there were a total of 109 righteous gods. They were all the top experts of the Tendo era. By the way, some of the ancestors of your Wu clan and the Tian clan were also righteous gods of the Tendo era. Hearing this, Amu and Xiao Dao were somewhat shocked. Amu said in astonishment, "Our Wu clan's ancestors?" Regarding the Wu clan's ancestors, they actually didn't know much about them. Because they were a whole era apart. Xiao Dao nodded. Your Wu clan's ancestors were the top among those righteous gods. At that time, those righteous gods were getting stronger and more arrogant. Some righteous gods wanted to eliminate the Tendo who posed the greatest threat to them. Amu said in a deep voice, "They were the ones who attacked first?" Xiao Dao nodded. These righteous gods were the ones who attacked first. They wanted to defy the heavens. I have to say, if they all joined forces, Tendo really wouldn't be able to defeat them. Unfortunately, Tendo was smarter than them. She directly disintegrated them from within. Moreover, she caught them off guard and took the initiative to kill the two strongest righteous gods. Just like that, those righteous gods were played to death by her alone. Amu, Xiao Dao said softly, "As far as I know, Tendo sealed 29 righteous gods in Buzhou Sacred Mountain. If these 29 righteous gods were released, the consequences would be very serious. That Shengong wanted to release these 29 righteous gods. And if he wanted to release these 29 righteous gods, he would need Tendo or human king. Obviously, Tendo is impossible. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't give up on Yi Xian." Saying that, she paused and then said, "What I'm most worried about is, if there are people from the upper realm helping him." Amu said in a deep voice, "Those dark creatures are also from the era of Tendo, right?" Xiao Dao nodded. "Yes. Those dark creatures are from the era of Tendo. Moreover, they existed even earlier than Shengong and the other righteous gods. The Lord of the Dark World had appeared in this universe with the heavenly Tao. This person's strength is not ordinary. Back then, Tendo was able to suppress him. But now, Tendo." Amu looked at Xiao Dao. "Did something happen to Tendo?" Xiao Dao shook his head. "Something must have happened to this woman. But she will definitely be fine. Her IQ is terrifyingly high." Amu nodded slightly. "I understand. But, wasn't that study created by the prophet? Why did it become something from the upper realm?" Xiao Dao looked at Amu. "The study was created by the prophet, but the prophet doesn't belong to this universe. Moreover, there are things that don't belong to this universe." Amu asked, "Who is the prophet?" Xiao Dao shook his head. "I won't answer this question. Because it won't do you any good." Amu was silent. Qian suddenly asked, "In other words, the people from above want this study, right?" Xiao Dao nodded. "Yes." Qian said, "What if we give them the study?" Xiao Dao said calmly, "Don't pin your hope of survival on the mercy of the enemy. Also, don't underestimate the prophet. He used his own life to play chess. Do you think it's easy?" Qian was silent. Xiao Dao glanced at the two women and said, "Both of you are intelligent people and have a far-sighted vision. However, there's always a higher mountain. The prophet and the Tendo are both good chess players. Don't think about breaking the game they set. Just let nature take its course. Because they have never thought of harming you. But if you're stupid and want to break the game, then you'll really be courting death. Understand? Amu nodded slightly. Understood. Xiao Dao continued, it's a good thing for both of your clans that the two of you can join forces. Amu suddenly asked, what is the sword sect fighting against? Xiao Dao said softly, something very dangerous. If it weren't for them, this universe would have been gone in advance. As she said that, she looked up into the depths of the starry sky. There are many dangerous things in this vast universe. Although there have been countless powerful clans and experts in this universe, compared to the entire universe, they are insignificant. After saying that, she turned around and left. Not long after, she disappeared from everyone's sight. After Xiao Dao left, Amu suddenly said softly, she's even more mysterious. Qian nodded. Yes. Amu looked at the horizon and said softly, we can't wait for the sword sect to help us every time. Qian looked at Amu. What do you want to do? Amu said softly. It's already the most dangerous time. Qian narrowed her eyes. That's for the sake of fighting against the fifth dimension tribulation. Amu smiled and didn't say anything. Qian was silent for a moment. Indeed, if we can't get through this, why wait for the fifth dimension tribulation? Let's go. After saying that, she left with Amu. In the field, Yi Ling turned around and looked at the grave. There was a trace of worry in her eyes. In a graveyard, the old man looked at the horizon and sighed. He continued sweeping with his broom. Not long after, he arrived in front of a grave. On the tombstone in front of the grave were 2 skewers of candied hawthorns. The old man looked at the tombstone. There were no words on the tombstone. After a long time, the old man sighed. He looked at the tombstone. There was a weapon in the shape of a thorn. It lay there quietly, as if waiting for its master to wake it up. The old man looked at it for a moment and said softly, considering the time, it should be over by now. After saying that, he turned around and left. In the depths of a distant starry sky, a white-robed woman was flying. She had her hands behind her back and there was a heroic spirit between her brows. A wine gourd hung from her waist. At this moment, the white-robed woman suddenly stopped. She looked up. Her gaze pierced through the starry sky, looking at an extremely distant place. After a long time, a sword light appeared in the depths of her eyes. The white-robed woman frowned. Gone. After saying that, her expression suddenly became ferocious. Don't worry, I'm not. After saying that, she suddenly punched out. Boom! Under that punch, the entire starry sky was destroyed. True nirvana. Under that punch, the entire starry sky was completely destroyed, never to appear again. In this pitch-black space, a powerful devouring force surged towards the white-robed woman. However, it did not cause her any harm. After a moment, the white-robed woman turned around and returned. Soon, she disappeared into the vast starry sky. That direction was the complete opposite of where she was originally going. In a certain grassland, a woman was squatting by the river. The river was clear and the bottom could be seen. The woman was very seriously counting the small fish in the river. At this moment, a phantom suddenly appeared not far in front of the woman. The phantom looked at the woman by the river without saying a word. The woman looked up at the phantom and said with a smile, I said before that I won't run. The phantom looked at the woman. I've always been curious. Why didn't you resist? The woman smiled. Why should I resist? This place is quite good. I can stay here and relax. The phantom said in a deep voice, you went to see him before. The woman nodded. To be precise, I went to see that woman. I wanted to make her stay longer, but she ignored me. The phantom suddenly asked, are you afraid of her? The woman smiled. Why should I be afraid? I didn't offend her. I'm a good person. The Phantom suddenly said, You don't seem to be human, do you? The woman shook her head. As long as I'm willing, I'm human. Of course, you can also say that I'm something else. After a moment of silence, the Phantom said, The seal of the dark world has been completely lifted. We did it. The woman looked at the Phantom and said with a smile, Well done. The Phantom. P.S. Between saving face and asking for a ticket, what do you think I'll choose? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.